Chapter 241, City Construction Nanxing Village. The damaged walls had been reconstructed and it only took a span of a few months for this place to recover its prosperity. Large numbers of xiuzhe had been transported over. This place also purchased all kinds of ore and other materials, but most importantly, this place sold ling grains, but it was limited. Just this was enough to cause all of Little Mountain Jie to shake. Just as all of Little Mountain Jie's eyes were on Nanxing Village, a crowd of people appeared soundlessly in a mountain valley. We've searched. There are 2 Jingshi mines here. The Jingshi produced here is not high, only 3rd grade. This area used to belong to Sky Star sect. Sky Star sect did not manage to avoid the calamity, and there were heavy fatalities. The other people have disappeared. Other than Jingshi mines, there are 3 more mines in this area. They do not produce much. The primary product is bright flash rock, black ling stone bead, and greenwater stone. The primary producer of greenwater stone comes from that pond right there. It is called Sky Star Lake. Xia Shan had done a large amount of work to research all of this. Suemo gave a satisfied expression. Let's choose this place. He then asked, what about the surrounding powers? Have they been investigated? Gongsun Cha smiled shyly and timidly, they have all been destroyed. It was not the first time he saw Gongsun Cha smile shyly like a teenage boy, but the coldness in Xia Shan's heart still could not be controlled. Gongsun Cha's trademark timid smile was called Lil Miss Slight Smile in the camp, and all of them were afraid of it as though it was a snake or scorpion. The female Xiu wearing the black mask stood behind Suemo. This female Xiu that had suddenly appeared had attracted everyone's attention. However, no one dared to challenge her. Even Xia Shan was intimidated by her powerful strength. Xia Shan, whose cultivation had reached Ningmai 3rd statum and was a step away from Jindan, but even he did not have the courage to face the mysterious female Xiu. Many people had been secretly speculating if the female Xiu was a Jindan. No one dared to ask, even Boss could not get her to speak. No one believed their face was bigger than Boss. Looking at the female Xiu that was always steps from the Boss, they felt that his was pretty good. With such a powerful guard, Boss wouldn't encounter any danger. This meant they did not have to worry that Boss would accidentally die, and they would collectively die as well. Dying without understanding why was an extremely depressing thought. Suemo did not have a solution to her following him. The female Xiu was of unknown origins, and Suemo naturally did not want her to overhear such secret information. But there was no way around it. The difference between their strengths was too large, his resistance was not effective. Even someone like Pu Yao praised her with powerful. Her martial strength quickly rose in Suemo's mind to an unprecedented level. In his memory, Pu Yao had never called someone powerful. Unable to communicate and not daring to attack, this was like the mouse pulling the turtle, unable to do a thing. Suemo decided to let it go, pretending that she was air, as he went about his own business. The only thing worth celebrating was that she did not speak, nor make a fuss. Other than being slightly creepy, there were no other inconveniences. He found it strange. He didn't believe that she was going to help him for the rest of her life because he had saved her. But no matter how puzzled he was, it was clear that he would not find out the truth at the moment, so he could only go with the flow. If the other held malicious aims against him, no one in the camp could stop her. Suemo could only comfort himself like so. He decided to put his attention on what was in front of him. In other words, this is ours now. N. Gongsun Cha nodded his head, and then added, no one to compete with us. At the side, Xia Shan almost choked on air. That was a waste of words, of course no one was competing with them. Gongsun Cha had taken the group and conquered an area 2,000 li in circumference, all of the powers had been plucked out one by one like they were nails. Even the xiuzhe who were hiding in the caves had not been let off. Lil Miss had sent out many small teams that combed the entire area. Great! Mo's eyebrows danced. The people around him that were used to seeing his zombie face felt extremely unadjusted. Boss' face was more and more lively. As they muttered inside, Xia Shan and the others waited for Boss' next words. After Lil Thamis had left Boss' place last time, the series of signs had shown that Boss was going to do something big. It had to be said that Gong Sun Cha had been very successful in his transformation of this group of lawless ruffians. The string of victories had increased their confidence, and the harder battles had tempered them and helped them complete the transformation. This troop, having been affected by a battle maniac like Gong Sun Cha, always showed great offensive strength and desire for battle. Having guessed that there was something big coming up, this group of people were full of anticipation. Reality proved their speculation was correct. Lil Thamis had personally led the troops and carried out a blitzkrieg operation. All the powers in the area 2,000 li in circumference around Sky Star Mountain were almost all taken out in the span of one night. This was exhilarating for this group of battle maniacs. The series of performance rewards, especially the spots for the sword formation, caused everyone to yearn about finding another eyesore and having a big battle. Then let's build a city, Zhuai Mo sent down the order, but Xia Shan and the others stared at each other. Boss, you said to build a city? Xia Shan probed. Yes. Build a big city. We are going to stay here for a while, Zhuai Mo said in a matter-of-fact voice. But we don't know how to build a city. Xia Shan frowned. Zhuai Mo rubbed his chin. Oh, that is a problem. Very quickly, the camp received a second round of skill selection. With the example of the first round of selection before them, the qualifying round this time filled many people with anticipation since the reward from the first round had been a very enviable one. 4th grade Golden Crow Fire. But quickly, everyone exchanged looks in silence. Build a city. The ending was, no one knew how. A headache instantly started. He knew how to make formations, but setting up formations and building a city were two different things. If the plan failed now, he would not be satisfied. He said to Gong Sun Cha, send some people out to investigate where there are Xiuzhe who know how to build cities. If they find one, no matter the method, they have to get the person back here. The first thing Gong Sun Cha did after returning was to gather everyone together. Who knows where there would be Xiuzhe that know how to build cities? After continuous battle, the number of Xiuzhe in the camp had rolled like a snowball and reached 730 people. However, the true core of power, and the ones with highest attack power were the 100 or 200 people that had been there since the beginning. The remaining Xiuzhe needed time in order to become offensive fighters. The benefit of more people was more information. As expected, several people provided some related information. Gong Sun Cha instantly sent people out to investigate immediately. The cataclysm in Little Mountain Jia had been very severe. Much of the information that had been provided were things they had known from before. Many were useless information that needed to be further investigated. Just as Zhuai Mo and the others were in a panic, Nanxing Village had opened. He Xiang looked at the waves of people on the street with ambition. He felt his future prospects were a road of light. When he had heard that Clear Sky sect had been hiring for the outer hall, he had went over at the first possible time. After having survived so laboriously in Little Mountain Jia for so long, no one knew better than he did what the Xiuzhe here needed, and were willing to pay for it. He had especially provided large amounts of suggestions to the sect, and received a good appraisal from the old forefather. He had personally been appointed by the old forefather as the chief elder and became one of the most important people in Little Mountain Jia in one step. He had not failed old forefather's hopes. He worked hard and diligently. His contribution in helping reconstruct Nanxing Village in just a few months could not be erased. A few days ago, they had tried to sell Ling grains. However, that was just the beginning. What would come next were the interactions with the different factions. That was the most important part of this battle, which had no death. As long as he could handle these interactions cleanly, no one could shake his position as chief elder of the outer hall. With the great weapon of Ling grains in his hand, he was full of confidence about the upcoming battle. Sky Moon Jie, a nondescript mountain valley, was abnormally silent. A figure landed from the sky. In a blink, it disappeared into the mountain valley. This Xiuzhe then appeared at the bottom of the valley. The bottom was covered in dense layers of jinji that would make people's scalp prickle. It continued on for a long distance, and it was possible to see that the person who set down the jinji was an expert. It was not possible to see a hint from outside the valley. This Xiuzhe made his practiced way through the alarming jinji without even looking. With a few twists and turns, he headed straight to a cliff face. The cliff face rippled and the person disappeared. The scene instantly changed inside. A seemingly borderless grass plain, a winding river. No one would have ever thought that such a large grass plain could be hidden in a mountain valley. Secret realm. If someone saw such a strange place, they would have shouted in shock. This was a secret realm. Entering the secret realm, this Xiuzhe's expression instantly lightened. The thick Ling power made him feel unspeakably comfortable. He flew straight towards the big river. There was a camp there. A few Xiuzhe flew out of the camp in welcome. "Huh, you came back." The Xiuzhe in the welcoming entourage smiled as he gave a greeting. "Must have been difficult." "No way about it." The Xiuzhe who had just flown in said helplessly. "Got stuck with this mission." "You guys have it easy, it seems you have made pretty good progress." "Ha." All of the Xiuzhe had proud expressions. "In the time you were gone, another 2 people entered Ningmai. The Ling energy here is just too thick." "That's so good." This Xiuzhe was somewhat jealous. "After this mission, you don't have to worry and can just cultivate." He, that's true." "Quick, leader is waiting for the news." N. The people instantly increased their speed as they flew towards the camp. After landing, this Xiuzhe instantly went to a tent. "Come in." A deep male voice. He hurriedly walked into the tent, and respectfully bowed to the male inside. "Darren, I have come back. It must have been great trouble for you." The male inside the tent raised his face and said in a warm tone. If Suemo saw this person, he would definitely recognize who it was. Bo Feng, the mysterious competitor that had appeared at the sword test conference, a person of mysterious power. It had been him who had bought the location of the secret sect from Suemo. He had actually stayed behind in Sky Moon Jie. Chapter 242, Bao Yi, when did Nanxing village become this prosperous? Lei Peng looked around, full of curiosity. It was not just him. The other people were also looking around with curiosity. The news that Clear Sky Sect was opening a market at Nanxing village had passed through Little Mountain Jia already. The intentions of Clear Sky Sect was clear in everyone's minds. However, the situation was stronger than the people, and resistance would be ineffective. Large numbers of Xiuzhe flooded Nanxing village, causing Nanxing village to become the most prosperous area of Little Mountain Jia. This was of great help to Lei Peng and his procession. From every angle, their procession was not too eye-catching. The leader was Xie Shan. Xie Shan had past experience as a leader, and he was skilled in creating relationships with people. Gong Sun Che had appointed him as the leader of the troop for this mission. After seeing the many wonders of boss and head, and after multiple bloody battles, Xie Shan's mentality had changed greatly. The little thoughts that he had before had faded. He was clear that even if he was the leader, he could not reach the present level of success. Lei Peng and the others were willing to follow Zuemo not because they had been conquered by Zuemo's dominating aura, but because they found that their present lives were better than before. For the great majority of people, this was enough. The procession was 15 people. The person with the highest cultivation was Xie Shan, Ningmai third stratum. The person with the lowest cultivation was Nian Lu, Ningmai second stratum. At a glance, this group did not show any signs of power. But Xia Shan was full of confidence in the mission this time. All 15 people were old-timers of the camp, and were very good at teamwork, but what made him so confident was that all 15 people, including him, had comprehended essence. Xia Shan had led many Xiuzhe before, and had never encountered such a strong group. No, he had never even heard of one. There wouldn't be so many Xiuzhe that had comprehended essence in Clear Sky Sect's disciples. 15 Xiuzhe that had comprehended essence, this was definitely a terrifying amount of power. He felt strangely excited every time he thought that he was leading such a group. Before the appearance of the sword formation, there had only been 5 Xiuzhe in the camp that had comprehended sword essence. Up until now, there had been 30 people that had gone into the sword formation, and 9 that had comprehended essence. Of the 9, 8 had comprehended sword essence, and Lei Peng, who practiced a saber scripture, comprehended a saber essence. The one with the most unique situation was Zhong Ru. Zhong Ru had recovered from his previous wounds, and naturally comprehended fist essence. He was the only person of the group who had comprehended essence without going through the sword formation. This was another reason why these people were willing to follow Zuemo. Nothing could be more persuasive to these people than the increase in strength. Why did they join big sects? It was to increase their strength and breakthrough at an earlier time. Due to personality issues, most of these people had negative experiences with other sections. They were very clear of the scheming and plotting that occurred inside the bigger sections. In the camp, as long as you put your best into train, and were not afraid of death when you fought, you would receive a corresponding reward. With spells, talismans, the sword formation, and formations, everyone's strength was flying ahead. These 15 Xiuzhe who had comprehended essence were the elite fighters of the camp. Xia Shan believed that as long as they did not encounter a Jindan, their safety was guaranteed. Xia Shan did not worry about the problem of safety at all. What he was thinking about was if he could finish the mission more beautifully. But before that, he planned on visiting a familiar acquaintance of his. This old acquaintance of his was called Bao Yi, who was a black market businessman that could buy anything. Before, he could always get some ling grains, and was famed in the profession. Boss Bao, Xia Shan cheerfully gave a greeting. To avoid attracting unnecessary attention, he had come alone. Bao Yi was both thin and tall like a stick of bamboo. When he saw Xia Shan, his eyes instantly lit up as he said in a warm voice, "Head Xia, what wind blew you here? Come in, please sit. Please sit." He had made a few transactions with Xia Shan before. The two of them were quite familiar with each other. He knew that Xia Shan had about 100 people under his command. Customers like this were primary targets of attention. However, it had been quite a long time since Xia Shan had come. He had actually feeling that it was a pity since he had assumed that Xia Shan had been killed. He hadn't expected the other man to still be alive. For him, this was a good matter. Why is it so empty here? As Xia Shan walked in, he looked around and asked in puzzlement. Bao Yi's face instantly wrinkled. Oh, there's nothing to do. Now that Clear Sky Sect has come to directly trade, the business of us little people have become harder. Oh, isn't the Clear Sky Sect doing large business? Bao Yi explained, Clear Sky Sect only does transactions with big factions, but it isn't possible for anyone to do business with small groups. Without jade discs, it is impossible to buy ling grains. With Boss Bao's skill, getting a few jade discs should be easy. Now, Xia Shan was really puzzled. Bao Yi's network was extremely complex and broad. He had ties with people from all levels of society. It should not be hard for him to get a few jade discs. Bao Yi grimaced, when a person is unlucky, they will even choke on water. The chief, elder of Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall, He Xiang, and I had a little conflict in the past. Xia Shan finally understood. He acted to frown. So it's like that. Then this won't be easy to do. Yes, exactly. Bao Yi's face was mournful as he sighed. I had come to Nanxing to see if there were any good opportunities. It's a coincidence that Boss Xie is also here. After 2 more days, I'm leaving. He managed to rouse his spirits. Does Boss Xie want to buy something? I have a bit left, not too much, but the quality isn't bad. If Boss Xie is interested, I can give a price and you can take the lot. Xie Shan's mouth continued to talk as his mind whirled furiously. If Boss wanted to build a city, then he wanted to do something big. He was not ignorant. He knew that it was not so easy to build a city. This Bao Yi might be a bit black-hearted, but he was an expert at business who also had hate towards Clear Sky sect. It was the first time Xie Shan had been given an important task. Naturally, he wanted to perform well. If he could accomplish a great service, Boss probably would not refuse him if he went and asked for a thread of golden crow fire. The mission this time was to find Xiuzhe that knew how to build a city, but if he could find some more talents, wouldn't his service be greater? He had been a leader for a period of time, and naturally understood more as to how to think of problems from the perspective of a leader. Seeing Xie Shan did not seem to be interested in his wares, Bao Yi's heart became even more bitter. This recent while, the matter of He Xiang and he having previously had a conflict had somehow passed around. His business had instantly dropped and no one came to his doors. How could he not know what had gone on in the shadows? If this place does not want to keep ye, there naturally are places that can keep ye. Old Bao, there's nothing to be said about your abilities. We've made more than one transaction before, and we know each other very well. What about it? Do you have any interest in helping this brother? Xie Shan smiled cheerfully as he looked at Bao Yi. Bao Yi gazed with slight shock at Xie Shan. Xie Shan had spoken so plainly that he knew what it meant. But it was that bluntness that shocked him. Xie Shan might have 100 people, but in Little Mountain Jie, that was only a little faction. Right now, his tone was so grand, had Xie Shan struck it rich? He was very familiar with Xie Shan and knew that Xie Shan was not an arrogant and irrational person. As he thought inside, Bao Yi asked in return, does Boss Xie not care about worsening your relationship with Clear Sky sect? Xie Shan chuckled. Old Bao, don't probe. I dare to say this because I have some certainty. Bao Yi's expression became slightly wary. If this little brother goes, what will I do? Of course it is to do your old occupation, business. Xie Shan thought for a beat before saying, however, I don't dare to promise you. It depends on what Boss is going to say. Boss. Bao Yi was shocked. There was someone else behind Xie Shan. It definitely would not be a weak power if it had managed to take in Xie Shan. He examined Xie Shan, and saw the confidence that naturally spilled out when Xie Shan mentioned his boss. Also, this power did not seem to be very afraid of Clear Sky sect. This puzzled him. He could not think of any power in Little Mountain Jie that was not afraid of Clear Sky sect. Xie Shan was a clever person. Seeing Bao Yi, he knew what the other was thinking, and roared with laughter, using his words to enlighten Bao Yi. Why is Boss Bao wavering? I cannot think of any situation that is worse than the present one. Bao Yi thought, that was right, what could be worse than his present situation? Since the other already knew he was on bad terms with Clear Sky sect yet still dared to hire him, then he had to have some form of support. He had some savings but everyone knew how that he and Clear Sky sect were on bad terms. They probably had already started scheming against him. Clear Sky sect might restrict fighting in Nanxing village, but if he was robbed, it was very likely that Clear Sky sect had been acting against him up in the shadows. After thinking it through, he did not hesitate any longer. Since Boss Xie holds Bao Yi in such esteem, I'm not one to not recognize what is good for me. From now on, please take good care of me. Ha ha. That's fine, fine. Xie Shan's mood instantly rose. Bao Yi smiled. We didn't come here this time for the Ling grains, right? The word "we" instantly tightened the distance between the two people. Xia Shan was very satisfied that Bao Yi had entered his role so quickly. He raised a thumb up at Bao Yi. Old Bao is so smart. Boss heard that many Xiuzha were gathering in Nanxing village, and told me to come to see if we can hire some talents. He decided to reveal some information to Bao Yi. He had come to see Bao Yi originally to find some information, but out of consideration for safety, he had not directly said that he was looking into the Xiuzha of the village. Bao Yi said in a deep voice, "What kind of talent does our boss want to hire? This little brother has stayed for a while at Nanxing village and might know something." Xia Shan's eye lit up. Anyone that has one skill. Bao Yi had a general understanding. This boss that he had never met before had an extremely strong base, and his ambitions were not small. These days, in Little Mountain Jia, the days of any kind of Xiuzha other than combat Xiu were extremely difficult. Since he had decided to enter the others group, Bao Yi decided he needed to perform well. In any organization, in order to be recognized, the simplest method was to let the boss see your abilities, and understand your value. "Do we have enough manpower?" he asked. "Enough." Chapter 243, Jade Scroll. In the secret realm, his subordinate Xiuzha were giving their reports. The Yao army has established their base in the Wukong Mountains. It is very heavily guarded. Our people do not dare to go close. Bo Feng nodded. "Do not alert them but keep an eye on them. If they make any unusual movements, report immediately." "Yes." Bo Feng asked some more questions about the details before letting the Xiuzha leave. When the Xiuzha left the tent, two figures suddenly appeared inside the tent. Bo Feng did not seem to be surprised. "What are you really looking for?" Gue Feng asked in a rough voice. At his side, Chang Heng's expression was indifferent as though he did not care about this question. "Haha, you'll know when it is time." Bo Feng smiled. Chang Heng was not interested in this matter. He stared at Bo Feng. "Give the other half of the scripture to me." Bo Feng said easily, "No problem." Gue Feng's expression changed. He seemed to be thinking. Suemo carefully looked at the black butterfly in front of him. Chun Yucheng was at his side, his eyes blazing as he observed the black butterfly. Suemo's mind had received a notice that the rainbow-marked butterfly had broken through its cocoon. Suemo had hurriedly pulled Chun Yucheng with him. When Chun Yucheng heard that the rainbow-marked butterfly had finished its metamorphosis, it instantly stirred his interest and he took a rare absence from his beast pool. The rainbow-marked butterfly had completely changed. The rainbow colors that had covered its entire body had disappeared. Now, its body was completely black, contrasting against a pair of lively eyes. "Can the spells still be used?" Chun Yucheng asked. "Still usable, and there now seems to be one more spell." Suemo closed his eyes and carefully communicated with the black butterfly. When he started his communication, he instantly felt a difference compared to the past. Before, he could only feel some pieces of what the rainbow-marked butterfly could feel. Presently, he could clearly feel the emotions of the butterfly. The black butterfly had become more intelligent than before. So it leveled up. Chun Yucheng said with excitement. Previously, it was just a third-grade Ling beast. Now, it should be a fourth-grade Ling beast. No wonder it has another spell. Have you discovered what kind of spell it is? A very weird spell. Suemo's expression was slightly weird. What spell? Chun Yucheng asked impatiently. Poison Ling. Poison Ling. What kind of spell is that? Chun Yucheng was puzzled. He had never heard of this kind of spell. It is unclear. Suemo shook his head. He was also ignorant. The two people looked at each other, with their faces confused. However, they did find out that the rainbow-marked butterfly had leveled up to fourth grade. Due to the black color of its body, Zhuemo decided to change its name to Black Butterfly. He would have to slowly investigate what this poison ling was. It would be great if it could level up to become a 5th-grade ling beast. Zhuemo drooled as he dreamed. He decided that he would definitely feed anything poisonous to the black butterfly if he found them in the future. He had personally experienced how powerful a 5th-grade ling beast was. If the black butterfly could level up to 5th grade, it could definitely beat down the bloody horned serpent. Of course, he quickly wiped clean his drool. It had been so difficult to level up to 4th grade from 3rd grade. He could only dream about leveling up to 5th grade. He picked up the gourd as well. The poison inside the gourd had all dissipated. It was a pretty good container-type talisman, especially for containing substances that were intangible. He was not polite in picking it up. Chun Yucheng saw that he could not discover anything else, so he rushed back to the beast pool. Right after Chun Yucheng left, Gongsun Cha approached him immediately after. Zhuemo saw that the other's expression was slightly strange and asked, "What? Did something happen? Take a look." Gongsun Cha handed over a jade scroll. Zhuemo took the jade scroll and skimmed it. He jumped in fright. "Holy moly, they're crazy." "I was frightened too." Gongsun Cha grimaced. "However, these people are pretty good." The last sentence revealed his true thoughts. "It really is very good." Zhuemo couldn't stop himself from reading further. The more the read, the wider his mouth grew. "Xixiang, do you think we will take?" "Yes." Zhuemo shook like a basin of cold water had been poured over his head on a hot summer day. His energy then swelled up. Holding his neck in an arch, he shouted, "Of course, we'll take them. All of them. Every single one. Do not leave one behind." Ji Wei, Sun Bao and the other people that had been forging were frightened by the insanity that Zhuemo displayed. Only the female Xiao that was standing nearby was unaffected, as though she had not heard it. In the camp, everyone was busy cultivating. The new members needed large amounts of training before they could join the combat system. Before this, they had all been normal Xiaojia, and were too unfamiliar with things like battle formations. "It is so boring." A Xiaojia sighed. When he glanced at the group of people who were training laboriously, he felt a burst of dullness. After the number of people grew, it was not suitable anymore to divide into small teams. Gongsun Cha reorganized the teams into 6 companies. Each company had 122 people, who were then divided into 6 platoons. They were led by a company leader and a vice company leader. Each platoon had 6 squads that were commanded by the platoon leader, who was assisted by the vice platoon leader. Each squad had 3 people, one of which was the squad leader. Due to the large number of new members, to help the new members quickly enter their roles, these old-timers that were now the company leaders had all taken up positions as instructors. However, to them, teaching the new people was an extremely boring task. When they saw the raw cooperation between the new members and their awkward movements, they were usually speechless. Even though they clearly knew that they had been no better when they first started, but they thirsted for battle. Gongsun Cha was like a successful wolf tamer. The sheep under his command had been slowly transformed into wolves. They had started to thirst for battle. Many people had admired Xia Shan and the others who had gone to carry out a mission. While they held admiration, they could only stay and stare. Those people were stronger than they were. They also understood that the stronger they were, the more likely it was that they would carry out more difficult missions, and had a chance to earn more merit. Even Gongsun Cha had never expected his unintentional actions had caused the sword formation to become the most attractive prize. Comprehending sword essence was the best path to increasing power. A person said without strength, "The earlier that we finish training these greenhorns, the earlier we get to rest. Laozi will never do this ever again." One of the people said furious, "This group of trash. They can't even perform the simplest 3-talent formation after all this time, they are so stupid." Please. Someone else beside him sneered, "Hey Z, you talk as though you were so skilled at the beginning. We weren't much better than them at the beginning. Oh, when can we go out on a mission? Laozi is so idle that my tastes have turned vegetarian." Hey Z wailed, his expression dejected. Yes, these days are too boring. People beside him also sighed. Whoosh whoosh. A humming sound suddenly sounded above the formation without any warning. The two people stilled, looked at each other, and shook simultaneously before they jumped up from the ground like lightning. Hey Z looked at the two new members that were still motionless and swore, "What are you doing sitting there? Move faster, this is the emergency signal." Finishing, he leaped into the air, the two new members hurriedly following behind him. Moving figures could be seen in the sky above the camp. The shouts of the company and platoon leaders rang out frequently. Faster, faster. What are you procrastinating for? Keep up. Find your position. Don't move around. A tense atmosphere covered the entire camp. All the Shouja quickly gathered together. Within 30 breaths, all the Shouja in the camp had flew into the air, and the ranks had finished assembling. The old-timers who saw Lilith Miss staring at them became excited. There was going to be something to do, a big thing. Gongsun Cha did not waste words. Seeing the troop had finished assembling, he waved his hand lightly. Everyone, move out. More than 700 Shouja silently flowed like a soundless flood across the sky. Nanxing Village, Great Wind Merchant House. Little Wei, calculate the accounts for today, the storekeeper slowly savored the Ling tea and lightly ordered. Yes, Wei Qingbin instinctively answered. The storekeeper detected Wei Qingbin's inattentiveness, his face instantly darkening. What? You worried about something? Do you feel dissatisfied with the work? It was like Wei Qingbin had been woken up from a dream. When he saw the storekeeper's dark face, he knew that it was not good. He gave a smile, "No, no. This one has just met a bit of a problem in my cultivation." Humph. The storekeeper snorted coldly. Cultivation? I hadn't seen before that Little Wei has great ambitions. You want to reach Jindan. To live, you have to be reliable. Do you know how many people are trying to get your ration of 50 caddies of Ling grains per month? Cultivation. Don't waste this old man's Ling grains. Wei Qingbin's face flushed entirely red. The storekeeper glanced at him and drawled, "One has to know their own limits. Little Mountain Jia has not had cultivation in a long time ago. 2/10 off this month's wage of Ling grains." When he finished, he strode away. Wei Qingbin's head was bent, and he did not make a sound. Unknowingly, his fists were so tight that they had turned white. After the storekeeper had gone far away, he relaxed his fists. In his hand was a jade scroll. This was a jade scroll he had received 2 days ago. It was an announcement for hiring. The other had learned from somewhere that he had a skill at illusory formations and came to headhunt him. They promised 200 caddies of Ling grains per month. Wei Qingbin had come from a sect, and his best skill was some little illusory formations. He could make extremely exquisite mirage formations. However, this great skill had not provided him with any benefit in a situation such as the present one. He had asked around everywhere, almost spending all his savings to beg to get a job like this. Accounting, hard labor, cleaning, he did everything. Compared to those Shouja that worried for Ling grains, he was much luckier. Rationally, he could settle down, but when he received this jade scroll, his heart uncontrollably started to jump. He did not know how many times the Shixiang had mocked him for playing with those little formations. In many people's eyes, he was the classical example of someone who only played around. The sect elders had thought of him as one who did not treasure their talent, especially after he had cultivated Ningmai, and had treated him coldly. This job might let him scrape by, but he didn't know how many eye rolls he had gotten. The enormous store, other than the storekeeper, he was the only one remaining. He had to do all the work. For some reason, the sneer and disdain of the storekeeper flashed in front of his eyes. Impulsiveness was the demon, impulsiveness was the demon. He continuously told himself, but his feet uncontrollably started to walk towards the outside. What are you doing? You idiot. I raised a trash like you for nothing. You don't have to come tomorrow. The storekeeper's bellows came from behind him. Wei Qingbin suddenly felt his body was unspeakably light, his steps increasing speed. In the dark, his eyes were as bright as jewels. Chapter 244, Consensus in Little Mountain Jia. No one would pay attention to the flow of Shuzhe. What everyone was attentive to was the flow of Ling grains. As for Shuzhe, who would care? Wei Qingbin found the place according to the address on the jade scroll. His heart was slightly insecure. He should have first confirmed it. If this jade scroll was a joke that someone played on him, then it would be terrible. This was the place. Two lifelike authoritative and ferocious stone lion-type auspicious beasts were standing by the two sides of the gate. He had some experience and knew these were mechanized golem beasts. They usually were motionless, but if one dared to attack, then they would attack at the first possible moment. The black metal gate was tightly shut. The light of Jinji occasionally flashed by. He was slightly reassured. Families that had this kind of house in Nanxing village should have at least some power. He put his palm on the copper bell diagram carved on the door and channeled Ling power. Ding dong. The bell sound was clear and ethereal. A moment later, the metal door slowly opened, a brawny man with a face full of scruff examined him, his gaze as sharp as a knife. Wei Qingbin felt his body tighten. He might be a Ningmai, but his combat abilities were very low. He had broken through to Ningmai due to a moment of enlightenment after working with illusory formations. He nervously swallowed. The brutal aura exuded by the large man in front of him created fear in him. I am Wei Qingbin. 2 days ago, I received a jade scroll, it said, hearing Wei Qingbin stammer on for a long time yet unable to clearly state his meaning. Lei Peng lost his patience and interrupted, okay. This is the place, you didn't go to the wrong place. Finishing, he raised Wei Qingbin with one hand as though he was picking up a little chicken, and flew inside. Wei Qingbin closed his eyes in fright, his entire body shaking. Lei Peng rolled his eyes inside. He didn't know who had suggested that he should be the one to welcome this group of people. Every single one person in this group was as cowardly as mice, and shook whenever they saw him. This compound was just one of Bao Yi's secret properties. As cunning as a rabbit, he had backups upon backups. That was his usual conduct. Another one came. The Ling power on Lei Peng's hand spat slightly, and Wei Qingbin was stunned into unconsciousness. He carelessly threw him on the ground. There's already 8 in this batch. With him, we only need one more before we can send them off, Xia Shan said with satisfaction. He had exceeded his mission this time. According to Bao Yi's intelligence, they had found 3 Shuzhe skilled in building cities. Without an exception, none of the 3 were able to resist the temptation of 200 caddies of Ling grains per month. He couldn't help but sigh. If they were anywhere outside of Little Mountain Jia, no matter where they went, they would be treated courteously. But in Little Mountain Jia, where life was worth as much as grass, just 200 caddies of Ling grains was enough to buy a Shuzhe's life. As a Shuzhe, Xia Shan couldn't not help but marvel. Bao Yi was off to the side. He was rejoicing that he had made the right choice. Even though he had not seen the boss yet, but he had been successively shocked by boss strength. Up until now, more than 60 people had been sent away. The people that had been delivered outside seemed to have disappeared into thin air. There definitely were people who were cooperating with them outside of the city, and that number would not be small. This group of people really were daring to act so boldly under Clear Sky Sect's nose. However, He felt very good secretly at being able to dig at clear sky sect walls. He really had his action of throwing in the lot beautiful. Xian looked down at the leaders of the different factions, the feeling of accomplishment in his heart reaching the peak in an instant. Previously, when he met any of the people seated here, he would have to nod his head and bend his waist, but right now, he could clearly capture the fear they had of him in the deepest part of their eyes. This feeling was really good. He quickly pulled himself back. He was very clear what his mission was. A warm and careful smile piled onto his face. His voice was very light like the clouds high up in the sky. My thanks to everyone here for waiting so long, then we shall now begin. 70 people, it should be enough. How about it? Let's stop. Lei Peng said impatiently. They had been guarding here every day. That clear sky sect was really trash. They hadn't reacted in the slightest. In the beginning, he had thought that this time would be a big mission. Who knew that it was so boring and tasteless? He just wanted to return to camp now. Xia Shan did not pay attention to him. He looked at the list and frowned. Why did the remaining people not come? Hearing this, Bao Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. We used Ling grains to attract them. In the end, it is like business, you and I have to both be willing. The remainder probably are living quite well now, and do not want to move. Then we will just leave them. Xia Shan was slightly discontent. He did not want to leave any regrets in the first mission he was leading. Bao Yi spread his hands. Then what? It's not like we can kidnap them. Kidnap them. Xia Shan's eyes lit up as he clapped in excitement. This idea is great. How come I didn't think of it? Hearing this, Lei Peng, who was at so much leisure that he felt restless, was also excited and furiously nodded. Not bad, not bad. We'll kidnap all of them. We won't leave one behind. The other people snickered as they exchanged looks. Zhong Ru helplessly raised his eyelids. His samhati had been interrupted once again. Bao Yi paled. No way. No way. It is very lucky that our recent actions had not attracted Clear Sky Sect's attention. If we go to kidnap people, we would certainly alarm Clear Sky Sect, then it would be great trouble. We're not afraid. Lei Peng twisted his mouth and said scornfully. Bao Yi hurriedly looked at the other people. When he saw the anticipatory expressions on their faces, he felt his vision darken. He thought of Zhong Ru. In his mind, Zhong Ru had always been calm and reliable. He definitely would not approve of this course of action. But before he could look at Zhong Ru, he heard Zhong Ru say in a voice filled with helplessness, "Should we do it now? Let's go, let's finish so I can go back sooner to train my samadhi." Bao Yi felt his head instantly sink into stillness. All 15 people agreed to the kidnapping. From the suggestions to passing the motion, it hadn't taken more than a minute. To be able to plan such a large kidnapping under the mighty Clear Sky Sect's eyes, it was enough to make everyone except Bao Yi feel their blood boil. Only this way would they not have wasted their journey here. Since they had decided, everyone quickly started to finalize the plan. After following Lil Miss for so long, they had started to learn how to make a plan, and the beginnings of being professional brutes. Bao Yi's face was pale as he listened from the side. He decided he would definitely stay far away from this group of madmen in the future. Especially Zhong Ru. Only now did he know how wrong he had been. Zhong Ru usually indifferent, but when he spoke, malicious and evil ideas were lightly thrown out. With one word from one and another from the other, a simple and rough plan was quickly born. When Wei Qingbin woke up, he found that he was on someone's back. The sound of wind that occasionally sounded around him let him know that he was flying at high speed through the air. He did not dare to move. He knew the limits of his own abilities. Up until now, he did not make a sound. He slightly turned his head, and warily scanned the surroundings. Not 10 zhang away from him, there was a Xiuzhe. He was also carrying a person on his back. When he clearly saw the surroundings, he was greatly shocked. There were more than 100 Shouja around him. Of those, only 20 of the Shouja were carrying people. The other Shouja had placed them at the very center. Wei Qingbin finally thought of what had occurred before he had become unconscious. Which faction did this group of people belong to? They really looked like a big faction. Even though he did not know his own future, but he was full of anticipation. It was very clear that this was an extremely well thought out plan. More than 100 Shouja were protecting and transporting the 20 of them. It could be seen how importantly they were being treated. The other side had spent such effort, so what they aimed for definitely would not be small. Notice your rhythm. Control the output of Ling power. Preserve the flexibility of the ranks. Combat units at the outermost layer, be on your guard. Try to avoid the clouds. He could hear endless shouts of scolding. What Wei Qingbin found wondrous was that the Shouja in the surroundings did not make a sound as they continuously adjusted their position. For some unknown reason, the stern silence this group of Shouja maintained made Wei Qingbin to feel a different kind of power. He couldn't help but make a closer examination. The troop that was in front of his eyes were different than any other troop he had seen before. More than 100 people were flying, but the ranks were so organized it was as though they had been drawn out with a ruler. The elites that he had seen before had been more relaxed and spread out. In front of this group, they seemed more like a random group of soldiers. He could occasionally see Shouja in groups of 3 or 5 moving far away. Those were probably sentries. The more he saw, the greater his shock was. The power that this troop displayed surpassed the limits of his imagination. Wei Ran's mind was tightly alert. He was the division leader of the 2nd Division, but before this, he had never led a group larger than 30 people. He was worried that he would not do a good job, and thus he was extremely attentive. He also worked hard at his cultivation. This was the first mission he was undergoing as a division leader. The mission that Gong Sun Cha had given him was not difficult: move forward along a predetermined path, and transport the 20 people back to the camp. When he had first heard the mission, he had released a breath, but when he saw the path, his expression became unnatural. This path drew out an extremely large curve. It was akin to having traveled in a circle before returning to the camp. He did not understand why Lil Miss would make such a complex and roundabout path. What worried him the most was this path would take him through the territories of multiple factions. This meant that they could be attacked at any time. However, when he saw the unnatural expressions of the other division leaders, he instantly understood. This was a mission, but it was also a test. Lil Miss was testing whether they had the abilities to be a division leader. Up until now, they had not encountered any dangers. However, they had encountered several Shouja yesterday that had skirted around them before leaving. Wei Ran was experienced in battle and understood that people had locked onto his group. On the entire way, he had constantly maintained the troop formations for combat. Seeing the increasingly practiced display from the Shouja under him, he couldn't help but sigh. As expected, true combat would temper a person. The improvement they had made in the last few days surpassed the improvement they had made in the previous month. A blinding red light suddenly exploded in the sky in front of them. Wei Ran's pupils suddenly shrank. It had come. That was the warning spell that their sentries had cast. He tried to compose himself, his mind furiously thinking back to what Lil Miss usually did. He raised his right hand to copy the aloofness of Lil Miss, his voice coming out abnormally cold. Prepare for battle. Chapter 245, First Battle. The sentries that had been swimming at the edges started to spread out. Their job was not to engage in battle, but to observe the direction of the entire battlefield. Wei Ran's expression was cold, his lips tightly pressed together. There were about 200 people in the enemy that were full of murderous intent as they charged. Wei Ran straightened his back like a sharp and upright spear. He slightly floated in the air, the shouts of the platoon leaders as they shouted at maximum passing into his ears. All of you, be alert. Notice your position. What is in front of you is a pile of trash. Kill them. Kill them all. Later, don't think of anything. Where I go, charge after me. Whoever fucking lingers behind, watch how I'll take care of him later. Follow what you usually do during training. The platoon leaders were doing their last adjustments before the battle. Most of the people under their command were greenhorns. They all had above-average individual power, but in this kind of battle tactic style that demanded rigor, so cooperation was the crux of victory. The rough, serious, or relaxed mobilizations burrowed into Wei Ran's ears. He uncontrollably started to heat up. He did not notice that a smear of red had appeared in his eyes. This really made a person's blood boil. Watching as the other side neared, Wei Ran raised his right hand again. All the noise disappeared. All 122 Xiuzhe were completely silent. The entire troop was like a great bow that had been fully drawn. Everyone's nerves were tense to their limits, especially the Xiuzhe at the front. The Ling power in their body vibrated, their presence continuously rising. However, their feet seemed to be nailed to their spot. Wei Qingbin unconsciously stopped breathing, his mind a patch of blankness. He had never experienced such a shocking battle. This patch of silence was like an invisible noose that wrapped around him and slowly tightened, choking his throat shut. It was slightly suffocating. He opened his mouth to pant heavily. He widened his eyes, and instinctively stared at the Xiuzhe at the front raise his right hand. His entire body started to unconsciously shake. He didn't know if it was in terror or excitement. Wei Ran coldly watched as the enemy entered the range of attack, the raised right hand suddenly chopping down. Kill! Pia! The air exploded crisply like a firework. The furiously rampaging Ling power of the 20 Xiuzhe that were at the front platoon suddenly lost their restraints and exploded. 20 figures suddenly disappeared into the air. Pia! It was another soul-shaking explosion. 20 Xiuzhe from the second platoon also disappeared into the air. Pia! The third platoon quickly followed behind. The trademark 3-section wave killing charge. Each little troop carried a gigantic sword energy 20 zhang above their heads. This was an attack created by the merging of 3 Xiuzhe's power. This kind of Ling merging technique could only be activated when the 3-talent formation reached a certain skill level. The gigantic sword energies tore through the air and howled. On the entire battlefield, all the other sword energies and spells lost color in comparison. In front of the gigantic sword energy, individual sword energies were as fragile as chopsticks, breaking upon impact. As fast as lightning. One platoon had 6 teams. It was as though 6 staggered blades cut right to the middle of the enemy. Blood rained through the sky. 6 deep bloody marks appeared in the ranks of the enemy. Anywhere they passed, if one was just brushed, it meant either cutting off the limbs or breaking the spine. With destructive force, they penetrated through the enemy formation. The enemy leaders' eyes bulged out of their sockets. Drag them down. Their later power, just as he had spoken halfway, the ghostly whale-like howl of the gigantic sword energy sounded again. The second platoon had arrived. 6 gigantic sword essences cut from a small angle on the right as they curved into the enemy formation. Pew pew pew. After a string of alarming sounds of cut of limbs and broken bones, the 6 gigantic sword essences plowed out 6 broad bloody groves. Wails passed into everyone's ears. The third platoon attacked from the opposite angle. Just as the second platoon had finished passing through the enemy formation, the third platoon had coincidentally entered the center of the enemy formation. Wei Ran pressed his lips tightly together. The power of the 3-section wave killing charge was evident. The courage of the enemy had been stolen, their morale plummeted and they had no more desire to battle. What he needed to do next was lay down the last straw that would break the camel's back. The 4th and 5th platoons suddenly attacked. The enemy, whose courage had already been stolen, panicked when they saw the 4th and 5th platoons press forward. In an instant, they broke formation and their lines collapsed as they scattered in all directions. Wei Ran's body finally relaxed. The battle had been settled. The 3-section wave-killing charge was peerless in its killing power, but it was not as though it did not have weaknesses. Its biggest weakness was that it was weak in its follow-up. If the enemy could stop the first few cycles of attacks, then they would be the ones in danger. The giant sword energies could defend, but the Ling power consumed was extremely terrifying. Gathering up all the Ling power before the charge was not just a posture. Wei Ran released a breath. This battle was much smoother than he had imagined. It now had no meaning. The leaders of the platoons directed the little teams to continuously move and cut. If there was a small gathering of people at one location, they were like sharks that tasted blood and would leap over. The fearful enemy fighters did not hesitate when they saw the situation, all of them turning and fleeing. Wei Ran hurriedly sent an order to not pursue. Their mission was to safely reach the camp, not to kill enemies. However, when he noticed some scattered Xiuzhe that had been watching from far away, he guessed that those were scouts from other factions. This battle should have intimidated many people, he pondered inside. The enemy had completely fled in a short while Wei Ran ordered some Xiuzhe to clean up the spoils, and everyone else landed to set up camp. The Xiuzhe that had just come out of battle all had excited expressions lingering on their faces, but they still meticulously completed their orders. All the platoon leaders all released a breath of relief. This kind of battle was just a minor matter to them, but they had still been worried about the new members under their command. In total, no major incidents had occurred, but combat had exposed many problems. Some squads had not performed to their training standards when they had sent out the gigantic sword energy in the fight, and almost were not able to penetrate the ranks of the enemy. If they could not penetrate the ranks, and were bogged down in the enemy formation, the enemy would immediately have swarmed and torn them to pieces. These platoon leaders still felt fear when they thought of it. Wei Ran did not interfere with the platoon leaders lecturing the Xiuzhe who had made mistakes. He silently patrolled the camp. A while later, the Xiuzhe that finished cleaning up returned. The spoils of victory were given to the vice division later who would give them to Lil Miss when they returned, and then divided according to contributions. Wei Qingbin gaped. The swiftness in which the battle had finished with had surpassed his imagination. When he heard the platoon leaders swear at their subordinations, he couldn't believe it. Was this not enough? Such crisp and clean combat, such strong subordinates, then why were they being sworn at? He was not skilled at battle, but that did not mean he did not have good eyes. He could generally see the traces of the skill of a troop. In his view, this completely unfamiliar and unique troop was the strongest that he had ever seen without exception. They were too demanding. Wei Qingbin was unable to understand. This victory was great motivation to the Xiuzhe who were being transported. Their anticipation towards their destination rose. In the chaotic little mountain Jia, martial strength was the most effective guarantee of survival. Nanxing Village. He Xiang looked at the fake smiles on the faces in front of him. His temple throbbed. The negotiations were more difficult than he had imaged. These factions seemed to have reached a certain agreement in secret, their positions were at a strange consensus. Even the leaders that he had a good relationship with before had reversed their attitudes and remained silent. He knew that these people just wanted to bargain, but for him who wanted to show his accomplishments, his abilities would only be displayed if he could push the price to the bottom. There were more than a few that were scheming after his position. He did not want to give them an opportunity. He smiled, not showing his thoughts. Everyone is tired today, let's take a rest. This one has prepared a banquet especially for this, please, everyone come attend. The leaders exchanged looks with each other, rose, and said they were tired and wanted to rest. He Xiang did not force them, smiling as he sent them out the door. When the last leader left, his dark expression could not be disguised any longer. He needed a way to divide them, he thought inside. Just as he turned to leave, he coincidentally caught the mirth in the eyes of one of the other elders and his mood instantly became even more terrible. "Is everyone sure of their target?" Xia Shan asked as he looked at everyone. Everyone nodded. Lei Ping rumbled, "Motherfucker, Laozi even had to watch him as he went to the bathroom, it really is unlucky." Everyone laughed lightly. To guarantee they would succeed with one blow, everyone had rehearsed before. They had divided the 10 targets among them. "We will move in 2 hours, Xia Shan did not waste words. All 15 people had their own techniques. He might have the highest cultivation, but he did not dare to posture. Fortunately, everyone was rule-abiding and did not need him to nag. 15 people silently spread out in all directions. Lei Peng's target was a guy skilled in dan-making. Even though Ling materials were now in short supply in Little Mountain Jia, but some businesses still had some in stock. Due to this person had found a pretty good job. Consequently, when he had received the Jade Scroll, he had weighed his options, and decided to stay with his current employer. Especially since his current employer was good to him and the Jade Scroll was of unknown origins. He was not willing to take the risk. For some reason, he felt the willies today as though something was going to happen. This caused him to be unable to focus. Every time he had this feeling, there never was anything good. He raised his head to look at the sky. The clouds were very low in the air, dense and suffocating. "Medicine Master, the owner is calling you." The busboy hurriedly rushed over. "Oh, I'm going now." He refocused and hurriedly moved. There was probably another job for him to do. He had just passed through into the backyard when he suddenly felt pain at the back of his head. His vision darkened, and he did not know anything else. Lei Peng held him with one hand and looked around. Looking around to see if he had alarmed any other people, he grinned silently before disappearing into the air. However, not everyone had the same good fortune as him. For example, Nian Lu. Nian Lu looked with panic at his target. A female shio skilled with livestock. She was presently teaching the other people how to put together feed for Ling beasts. These apprentices were extremely respectful and listened carefully. The time to act had arrived. Seeing that the target would definitely not be leaving soon, Nian Lu gritted his teeth, and decided to move. His figure was like a ghost that appeared behind the female shio. His hand gently chopped, his left hand raising and grasping. The unconscious female shio was on his back. His movements were clean and crisp. Only when he had disappeared through the door did the apprentices finally react, yelling in fear. The guards of the store were instantly alerted and flew into the air. The same situation, at the same time, occurred at different places in Nanxing village. Nanxing village instantly became a mess. Chapter 246, Ambush the Camp. Zuomo looked at the female shio and scratched his head, "You need a name. This way, we can call each other." After changing his body, his hair had become short. When he scratched, he felt the hair was prickly like metal wire. So strange. How could his hair be this hard? The female shio did not seem to hear him. When Zuomo had inspected her injuries last time, he found that there was a strange and icy power inside her body. The reason the alarming injuries inside her body had not worsened was due to this strange power. This unknown power was like strong spider silk that reached into every corner of her body. Zuomo would think sometimes that if the strange power did not exist, her body would shatter into pieces. The reason her presence caused fear in others should also be caused by this unknown power, Zuomo thought to himself. No one dared to go near her. Even Silly Bird, the silly big sister, did not dare to go within 3 zhang of her, not to mention the cowardly pair of Lil Pagoda and Lil Black. Seeing the female Xiu's lack of response, Suemo put his attention back on the wiry hair on his scalp. He wouldn't be turning into a Yao beast, right? He thought inside. The 3 golden armor guards stood nearby with their swords. They also seemed to be slightly afraid of the female Xiu. Weren't the golden armor guards golems? Why would they be afraid of a person? The female Xiu was a puzzle. It seemed like there would be no result today. Suemo shook his head. He had persisted in chatting with the female Xiu every day to deepen their connection, but up until now, there was no result. She was like a stone statue that stood there motionlessly. Suemo had never even heard her speak. Was she mute? Suemo thought uncertainly. In his mind, this female did not seem to have come from a big sect, because she was truly too unclean and ugly. Behind the disheveled appearance was a mess of dense lichen-like scabies. The only part untouched was the pair of bare feet. In reality, Suemo had never seen such beautiful feet. Symmetrical and white like jade and porcelain. There were no flaws. They were warm and delicate, exquisite like nothing else. When Suemo had been inspecting her injuries, and when he had seen this pair of bare feet for the first time, his mind had blanked for a moment. They seemed to hold a fatal attraction that made one unable to move their gaze aside. It was a pity that scabies covered everything above the knees. She wore the mask and a loose hemp robe. Her bare feet were in the mud. The snowy white and fine bare feet and the black mud made a strong contrast. Every time Suemo saw it, he would uncontrollably stop breathing. What followed after would be pity. It was very pitiful for a woman to be covered in scabies. He sighed inside. He didn't know what he was sighing about. He flew onto a mountain peak. Looking into the distance, the sky was tourmaline and the white clouds were like silk. The wind was gentle and refreshing. At the base of the mountain, the Sky Star Lake was like a clear jewel embedded among the mountain peaks. Suemo's mood instantly opened up. Little Mountain Jia might have lost its Ling energy, but there was not much of a difference to these flora and wild beasts. Due to the lack of activity of Xiuzha, the mountains were even more green. In order to construct the city, he moved the camp to Sky Star Mountain. He suddenly thought of the unwillingness on Chun Yucheng's face. He grinned. Chun Shidi was really a maniac about livestock. Ji Wei and Sun Bao led their subordinates and furiously rushed about. The amount of materials needed to construct a city was an exceedingly terrifying number. For example, the bricks. Most of them had to be cut from the mountain. Each piece had to be processed and carved with formations. It was not hard for Xiuzha to cut rocks, but processing them was not as easy. To increase the speed, Suemo had set up a large formation to gather large amounts of golden crow fire again. Each person received a portion. The Xiuzha naturally were overjoyed and worked harder. Each piece of bluestone was 3 zhang long, 1 zhang wide, and 1 zhang high. After the golden armor guards mined it, the Xiuzha would start to process it. What caused Suemo to have a headache was the grade of the golden crow fire was too high. If they were the slightest bit inattentive, these second-grade bluestones would turn into a pile of molten rocks. Later, the problem was finally solved when they decided to first carve the formations before they processed with the golden crow fire. However, during the entire processing method, the bluestone bricks would shrink to more than half its original size and turn to a blue-gold color. The quality was extremely dense and hard. Suemo had experimented. Even if he chopped with a flying sword, sparks would fly but the brick would not be damaged. Only when Suemo channeled all the Ling power in his body would the sword cut halfway into the brick. Such a material would not be enough to use to make Ling armor, but it was more than sufficient to use for city walls. 50 Xiuzha were all tasked with processing bluestone bricks. Suemo himself was busy with surveying the geography. The newly constructed city had to have formations. The formations he set up this time were to face a Jindan. This was an unprecedented test for Suemo. The large formations he had set up before, including the large formation on Desolate Wood Reef, were not enough to stop a Jindan. He had seen Jindan before, but had never fought against one before. He did not know how powerful they are, but he knew they were definitely more powerful than he could imagine. There was an innate difference in terms of comprehension of Ling power between Ningmai and Jindan. He did not know how great this innate difference was. He could only do as much as he was able. The path was dangerous. Looking at the mountains in the distance, Suo Mo's eyes were black and deep. Nian Lu was carrying a person on his back while the scenery flashed by. His speed had not been impeded at all. If one looked closely, they would find that a white lotus was under his feet. With the white robes, the tender white lotus flower, he looked unspeakably handsome as he flew in the wind. The eyes of many young females along his path lit up. Whoa! So handsome! The shrieks of the female Xiu were endless. The Xiuzhe that were pursuing him heard the exclamations, causing their expressions to become even uglier. Nian Lu did not use any disguise at this time. He picked the most straightforward path, a straight line. Not just him, the other 9 people had also picked straight lines. From different places within the village, they all sprinted towards the village gate of Nanxing Village. If one looked down from above Nanxing Village, they would see 10 figures drawing out 10 straight lines that were going to intersect at the village gate. Behind them, there were between 50 and 60 Xiuzhe who seemed to be attracted and pulled towards the village gate. Many Xiuzhe flew into the sky. They were watching the spectacle. Inside, they were very shocked. Who dared to be so presumptuous in Clear Sky Sect's territory? Lei Peng was the first to reach the village gate. He even had the leisure to look back at his fellows that were sprinting towards him. Giving a smug grin, he then turned and slowly went through the village gate. The other 9 people simultaneously saw the smug expression on Lei Peng's face, and they all rolled their eyes at the same time. Without needed to exchange a word, they snorted, and moved faster. Ear-piercing howling instantly roared through Nanxing Village. The 9 figures were like 9 sharp arrows that howled as they headed straight for the village gates. The gate of Nanxing Village was just a symbolic construction. He Xiang had never expected people to dare to scheme against Clear Sky Sect. Who would dare to rampage on Clear Sky Sect's territory? Only if that person did not want to keep living in Little Mountain Jie. Due to this, the defenses of Nanxing Village were pitifully weak. The 9 figures flashed past at high speeds. The pitiful gates were torn to pieces by the knife-like tailwinds. Dust and wood flew at the village gates. The Xiuzhe in pursuit directly ran into it. Seeing the situation, they did not slow down. A light flashed across their Ling armor and their Ling shields were opened as they prepared to directly go through the village gate. I just knew that these people want us to eat their dust. Inside the dust, someone complained. Countless sword energies suddenly shot out of the dust like bats hiding in the dark that showed their vampiric teeth. There's an ambush. The pursuing Xiuzhe all paled. Pew pew pew. The Xiuzhe at the very front basically had no time to react. Their Ling armor was instantly penetrated like it was made of papier-mâché. Several bloody holes appeared on the body of this Xiuzhe. The expression of this Xiuzhe instantly froze, his body losing control and falling into the dirt like a bag of sand. It was not just him alone. Several of the Xiuzhe in the front did not survive. Sword essence. The Xiuzhe at the back paled. Such destructive sword energies, there was only one possibility, sword essence. Only Sword Xiu that comprehended sword essence could release such a terrifying sword energy which could so easily penetrate Ling armor and kill with one strike. There were not many sword energies, but they were of different colors. It was clear they had been released by different Sword Xiu. There wasn't just one Sword Xiu who had comprehended sword essence. The expressions of this group of Xiuzhe changed drastically. Sword Xiu who comprehended sword essence were rare. 1 in 100 of Ningmai sword Shio comprehending sword essence was considered a rare event. Why did sword Shio always persist in trying to comprehend sword essence? That was because the power of the sword energies were much greater if one comprehended sword essence. This kind of increase depended on the individual and the sword scripture, but it was certain that sword Shio who comprehend sword essence were much scarier than sword Shio of the same cultivation who had not comprehended sword essence. 7 sword Shio died in the first encounter. Other than fear, the other people rejoiced inside that they had not been so close in their pursuit. What made them even happier was that the collision between the two sides had swept away the scattered dust. The other side also showed themselves. 5 people. There were only 5 people. Their hearts were slightly reassured. Even if these 5 people all comprehended sword essence, but the number was too small. There were 50 to 60 on their side. Zhong Ru stood on the street with his eyes closed, his hand holding the 4-flanged Vajragata. There was no joy or sorrow in his heart. His beaded bracelet had been destroyed in the battle with the bloody horned serpent. Zhuemo had felt especially guilty and had the idea of finding a talisman for Zhong Ru. However, Zhong Ru was a rare Dhyana Shio. Dhyana talismans were even harder to find. Zhuemo had suddenly recalled that he had a damaged 4-flanged Vajragata in his ring. That 4-flanged Vajragata was a true Dhyana Shio talisman. When Zhong Ru had used his full power with his bracelet, Zhuemo had caught a thread of the mysteries of Dhyana talismans. He had put in great thought and reforged the 4-flanged Vajragata before giving it to Zhong Ru. When this 4-flanged Vajragata came into Zhong Ru's hands, Zhong Ru instantly knew this wasn't a Dhyana talisman of a low grade. The Gata itself contained extremely abundant Buddhist mindfulness. He did not know which great elder had carried this Gata along his path of enlightenment. Over time, this 4-flanged Vajragata had accumulated large amounts of Buddhist mindfulness. The power that this 4-flanged Vajragata could express in Zhuemo's hands wasn't even 1% of what it could be in Zhong Ru's hands. The Buddhist mindfulness resting in the Gata itself was extremely beneficial to Zhong Ru's cultivation. What was most valuable was that there were many scenes of the comprehensions that the elder had experienced in Buddhist fixity. Zhong Ru, who had been troubled due to his lack of a teacher, progressed quickly upon receiving such a treasure. Other than his fist essence, even his abhina which he had thought he would never form in this lifetime had unintentionally formed. He felt the warm and cold presence that came from the 4-flanged Vajragata just before the sword energies disappeared. Zhong Ru suddenly opened his tightly closed eyes. Chapter 247, Rainbow Mirage Light. Zhong Ru's gaze was indifferent, his left hand held the 4-flanged Vajragata, his right hand formed a seal. Duo. His voice resounded like a vast bell. It was not high and exciting, but it could be heard throughout Nanxing village. With him as the center, an invisible hurricane swept outwards. The faces of the Xiuzha all changed. The Ling armors they were wearing were already activated, but this shout seemed to have sounded from the bottom of their hearts. Their Ling shields were not effective at all. What shocked them even more was all the Ling power in their bodies suddenly froze for a moment. Abhina, truth speech. The other 4 people took the opportunity to jump off the ground. Lightning fast, they were like 4 flying swords that thrust into the crowd. Ma Fan only took a quick glance and the battlefield was imprinted in his mind. After being the core for so long, his grasp of the entire battle situation was unparalleled in the camp. He had undergone the greatest change in the camp, or rather, he had improved the most, especially the presence he now had. When he had been made the core, his performance had been very inexperienced. After gradually adjusting, a presence appeared on his body, one that was extremely authoritative. He had previously been an eternally roaming wolf that always gave people the sense of danger. The present him was less attention-catching. His features were ordinary. In a crowd, it was now harder to pick him out. Illusory shadowless sword of destruction, was the killing move he had used the most in the past, but as his understanding of sword essence and battle had deepened, he started to experiment with simpler sword moves. Gradually, the number of times he used, illusory shadowless sword of destruction, had decreased, and his edges had gradually been hidden. After he learned the 5th grade, void movement, method, which lacked the dazzle of his previous illusory movement method, the threat he posed increased rather than decreased. In a chaotic battle, it was difficult for the enemy to even detect his existence. Ma Fan's stealth was wonderfully displayed at this time. He was like an unnoticeable thread of light smoke floating among this crowd. There were no grand sword moves. Even his sword energies were just several CUN long. He was like a little swordfish, but no one other than Xie Shan could rival his efficiency. In the blink of an eye, he had defeated 7 or 8 people. Many people had not even found they had been attacked before he had disappeared without a shadow. Compared to Ma Fan's clean and high-efficiency killing intent that was concealed, Xie Shan was a completely different style. Keen. As keen as a sword. He was like an unsheathed sword. Countless 5-colored sword essences swam around him like rainbow flying swords. The pressuring sword essences intercrossed, extremely beautiful, and full of killing intent. Xie Shan was a clever person. He knew his strengths and weaknesses. In Little Mountain Jia, those with Ningmai 3rd stratum cultivation could be counted on the fingers. In the stage of Ningmai 3rd stratum, the lowest amount of Ling power in the body was 90 Jing. No one knew that the Ling power in Xie Shan's body had reached an astounding 180 Jing. There was a saying that if a person could get the Ling power in their body to contain more than 200 Jing, they could enter Jindan. This kind of saying was not reliable, but it showed just how strong Xie Shan was. He had almost reached the peak of Ningmai. The benefit of deep cultivation was that those killing moves that came at great cost were not significant to him. He rarely used killing moves. His comprehension of sword essence meant that he could easily face other enemies. However, Ma Fan had provoked his competitiveness today. The pure Ling power in his body were instantly channeled. The multicolored sword energies around his body brightened and vibrated. A light flashed through his eyes. His fingers came together and he pointed at the crowd of Shouja. 5-colored light rose in the sky above his head in layers like an aurora curtain. The sun in the sky lost color at this moment. As his fingers pointed into the air, the aurora in the sky suddenly broke, and countless broken sword essences howled as they turned to streaming 5-colored lights that shot down. Killing intent rose with the rain of light. It was a 5-colored rainstorm. However, no one had the energy to spare to watch it. The sound of air tearing made everyone's scalp prickle. What shocked the surrounding spectators was that Xie Shan's move had covered all the Shouja that had been pursuing them. Rainbow Mirage Light. This beautiful and ethereal name was a terrifying killing move. The Ling power it consumed was even more astonishing. 150 Jing of Ling power. It was more than the total Ling power that the great majority of Ningmai contained in their bodies. Ma Fan's expression changed and he did not hesitate in pulling out and retreating. He was not the only one. The other 2 Shouja who had charged forward also changed expressions, turning and then running back. This madman. They were extremely shocked. They knew that no one in the camp could compare to Xie Shan's cultivation, but they had never expected that he was this powerful. Ma Fan could not calm his heart. He had always assumed that while Xie Shan's cultivation was high, but they were equal in their strength. Due to the incorrect assumptions, he never placed much emphasis on his own cultivation. However, this scene today totally destroyed his worldview. They had escaped from this move because the sword essence in the sky had not locked onto them. Otherwise, it would have been as though they had sunk into quicksand and would be unable to take a single step. Xie Shan used this move to show them that Shouja of deep cultivation were terrifying. The Shouja that were covered by the rainbow rain were in tragic states. Other than sharpness, the 5-colored sword energies also had a strange corroding power. The Ling shield would only hold up to several blows before it would break. The Xiuzhe that had been struck by the 5 colored streams of light were not able to even make a sound before their bodies rapidly changed into a puddle of soft 5-colored mud. Lei Peng and the other 9 that had ran away stopped at this time. They stared with their mouths wide open in shock as they looked in the direction of Nanxing village to see that patch of terrifying rainbow rain. Before they could sigh, they saw the 5 people flying over. Everyone's gaze as they looked at Xia Shan had changed. Xia Shan was not very smug. He only had 30 jing of Ling power left in his body. It would not be good if a battle occurred again. Move quickly. He did not hesitate as he passed by the others and threw out the 2 words. The others woke and hurriedly channeled their Ling power as they fled for their lives. Everyone knew that they had gone overboard. The killing move that consumed 150 jing of Ling power had startled all the Xiuzhe in Nanxing village. In the blink of an eye, all the Xiuzhe in Nanxing village flew into the sky. The sky was covered. Their expressions were strangely similar, extremely shocked. Even the Funing my 3rd stratum Xiuzhe had paled. 150 jing of Ling power, that was more than all the Ling power in their bodies. Not one Xiuzhe was standing in the area covered by the rainbow rain. Ling armor, talismans and flying swords covered the ground. At this time, no one dared to go and pick them up. The rainbow liquid that was flowing everywhere was like a beautiful yet fatal poison. He Xiang gaped as he looked at this scene, his mind blank. It was over. Having stayed at the camp, Suemo did not know at all that the affair had become so large. He was busy settling in the first batch of Xiuzhe that had arrived. The Xiuzhe that were skilled in city building had been delivered to Sky Star Mountain with the quickest possible speed. Seeing the patch of wild mountains in a crude camp, many people had disappointed expressions. Suemo did not attend to these people. He went straight to the Xiuzhe who were skilled in city construction and spoke of his demands. Build a city. The 3 people looked at each other, their faces filled with disbelief. Did he assume that building a city was just putting a pile of rocks together and that was it? Is there a problem? Suemo looked at the 3 with slight displeasure. The 3 people were not dumb. They knew that it was impossible for them to return now that they had arrived here. If they immediately offended the boss, they could not think about having a good future. How big of a city does boss want to construct? Asked one of them. Following the flow of this mountain range, it needs to include these peaks, able to defend against the attacks of a Jindan, able to. The 3 all collectively sank to inertness. The expense will be a bit high, another person probed. No problem, we have enough Jingshi. Suomo's attitude was like that of a nouveau riche. We need lots of manpower. Oh, 700 Xiuzhe, is that enough? I can also make some puppets. Suemo rubbed his chin and said to himself, it seems that I need to let Gongsun Shidi get some more people. These words made the 3 feel a malicious intent. Was this person a Xiu slave trader? However, the 3 had seen the combat abilities of this group on the way here. They did not believe Xiu slave traders would have such a strong troop. The 3 saw Suemo was serious and started to also seriously focus on surveying the landscape. A few days later, 2nd Division had smoothly arrived back at camp. When Wei Qingbin came to the crude campsite, he was also very disappointed. However, before he could recover from the disappointment, the Xiuzhe who had been hired were led in front of a person. Ji Wei looked down at the crowd of Xiuzhe that had recoiled slightly and shouted, those that know forging, come out. A while later, they looked at each other, but no one dared to walk out. Ji Wei had expected the situation and followed up with, those that know forging can start work immediately. Let me tell you, this place pays wages on a unit basis. If you are late and the positions are taken, don't blame other people. Just as he finished, people instantly reacted, I know. I know too. Ji Wei was not picky. He waved his hands, all of you, come with me. 8 people followed Ji Wei. Wei Qingbin was among them. Because he had studied small illusory formations, he had put in quite a bit of effort on forging. He was not good at forging big pieces, but was very good as making small ones. They were taken to a mountain cave. The mountain cave clearly had been just carved out, and the person who dug it seemed to have no intentions of decoration. The walls were bare stone and mud. When they walked to the end of the mountain cave, they found that the area was extremely wide. However, it was all empty. There was nothing. Someone could not resist. Where's the fire pool for forging? The gold steel drills? Without those things, how can we forge? Ji Wei looked with dissatisfaction at the person and bellowed, "Shut up. You don't have any conduct." Seeing the person shrink back in fear, he snorted coldly and did not look at the person any longer. "Starting from today, you will be working here." The other people had expressions of bewilderment, but did not speak. Ji Wei was very satisfied. "As to the things you mentions, this place has none of them," Jia Wei said proudly. "Starting from today, you need to adjust to a new kind of forging method." At this time, the Shilja beside Ji Wei started to distribute jade boxes to everyone. Wei Qingbin took the jade book with puzzlement. The jade box was very light in his hands. What it contained was very small. He looked cautiously at Ji Wei. Seeing the other did not seem to object to them opening the jade box, he carefully opened the jade box. His eyes suddenly widened, his mind blank. Golden Crow Fire. Chapter 248, The Problem of Settlement. When Lei Peng and the others returned, Sui Mo was discussing the construction plans of the city with the 3 people. Never having participated in building a city before, Sui Mo was extremely interested. Also, the newly built city was of extremely important in his plan. To the 3 people, a strong village that could defend against a Jindan was something they had never done before. They were extremely interested. As to the feasibility of the plans due to the high difficulty, that was boss' problem. They were only in charge of designing it. What is the use of this beacon tower? Suemo pointed at the plans and asked. It is primarily to give warning to allies. Other than that, it can contain 20 Shouja. Its Ling shield can protect Shouja. Shouja standing on the top do not have to worry about the attacks of the enemy. But don't you think it is too small? It can hold 20 people, it is not small. Small, it's too small. At the very least, it needs to be able to hold 50 Shouja. That way, it has offensive power. Also, we don't need that fire altar. We only have one city, we don't need to give anyone warnings. Without the fire altar, is it still a beacon tower? We can give it another name. What about Sword Pavilion, how do you guys feel about it? Suemo asked with interest. The 3 were wordless. Suemo clearly had not finished speaking his thoughts. Your plans are pretty good, but it is too conservative. Pure defense cannot stop the attacks of the enemy. Jindan recover Ling power faster than us. If he can't defeat us the first day, he'll come back the second day. If he continues to attack for a dozen days or a month, do you feel we can stop him? The 3 were speechless again. One person argued, if a Jindan attacks a city, there's no city in Little Mountain Jia that can stop him. There wasn't one before, but there will be one soon. Suemo looked at the other, and then added, if there isn't one when it's time, we will all die. The 3 instantly started to sweat, feeling hopelessness. Heavens, who had boss offended? Wait. Jindan. A person flashed across their minds, Clear Sky Old Forefather. There was only one Jindan Shouja in Little Mountain Jia. Clear Sky Old Forefather, a person asked in a trembling voice. Suemo smiled and said, your guess is so accurate. The 3's faces turned ashy. Suemo's smile was so evil in their eyes, more evil than a demon. They were extremely regretful. Before, their lives were poor, but at least they wouldn't be at risk for losing their little lives. Okay, everyone, Suemo clapped his hands, cheer up. I know you are the same as me, you don't want to die. So cheer up. Use your strongest imagination and give the most plausible plan. One person looked soulless, but he managed to keep his composure. Boss, you can't defend against a Jindan. Then what do we do? Suemo spread his hands and asked. This person bit out, if we can't defend, maybe we can try to kill him. You're crazy. The other two people yelled. Continue. Suemo was shocked inside, and gave a surprised expression. This person's face was white, but his eyes flashed with an insane light. Jindan might be strong, but they do have weaknesses. They are too proud, they believe too much in their own strength. They would not care about things that look very dangerous to us. We can make a trap using the city as bait. He may fall for it. It's not possible. He will see through our disguise. You cannot kill a Jindan. The other two muttered as though they were dreaming. Suemo scanned this person and asked, What's your name? Yuan Jiang, boss, the person answered respectfully. From today on, you are the leader of the three of you, Suemo then said to the other two, you two will be his assistants. If someone doesn't listen, you won't live if you rebel against a Jindan, but if you rebel against me, you won't have a life now. The two people's faces instantly whitened again, and fell silent. Make a new plan, Suemo said to Yuan Jiang. Yes, boss. Yuan Jiang said respectfully. He knew that if he was able to grasp this chance, his future prospects were limitless. Gongsun Cha listened to the people report. Xia Shan stood at the side with an ashamed expression. He knew that he had gone overboard this time. He had exposed himself too early in front of the public. It was not a good thing for them. Oh, so it's like that. Gongsun Cha raised his head, and gave a shy smile. He said warmly, no problem. Xia Shan's heart loosened slightly. However, Xia Shan's heart suddenly rose again. Since you guys caused this problem, then you need to wipe your own butts. Gongsun Cha then seemed to say to himself, oh, this is a pretty good chance, can't waste it. No one understood what Lil Miss meant in his words to himself. Right now, Clear Sky Sect is definitely searching for you. Even though you have covered your tracks very well, but they probably will not have to try so hard to find this place. Your present mission is to stop and disrupt their pursuit. Everyone instantly had an excited expression. Wasn't this another chance to fight? The corner of Gongsun Cha's mouth rose in an imperceptible curve. All of you will lead a platoon in this disruption mission. Ah! We also need to take those new people. The people who had just been so excited instantly withered. They finally reacted. What disruption mission? It was a babysitting mission. Thinking about taking along a large group of newbies that didn't know a thing, everyone, including Zhong Ru, had a grimace on their face. They were very willing to kill. But not one of them was willing to be a babysitter. What, you aren't willing? Gongsun Cha smiled, showing his teeth. Everyone's hearts suddenly froze. They simultaneously shook their heads. Willing, how can we not be willing? Leading a group of people, it will be very imposing, haha. Lei Peng's laughter was like sobbing. Very willing, very willing. Nian Lu hurried to agree, afraid if he wasn't careful, Lil Miss would fix onto him. Then it really would be getting a strip torn off his hide. Ma Fan saw Lil Miss' eyes float towards him and hurriedly jumped out. This subordinate is willing to be the first to fight. The other people instantly were upset. How come they hadn't been the first to declare themselves? Ma Fan's mind was getting better and better. He hadn't been the core for nothing. Instantly, everyone asked to fight. Gongsun Cha gave a shy and bashful smile, and said softly, you have to be careful. Hearing this, it was as though everyone had been pardoned, and they scattered, rushing to go pick people. Suemo suddenly felt he was much busier. All the shouja that had been brought over had at least one skill. He had to personally make arrangements for many people. However, before this, the first person he had to meet was the one who had planned all this, Bao Yi. Boss. Bao Yi respectfully bowed. When he first saw Suemo, he was extremely shocked. From any angle, this boss looked like a youth that did not seem to have even entered his 20s. The more amazed he was, the less he dared to slight boss. To be able to gather together such a large group of people at such an age, his abilities were definitely not something that a little businessman like him could underestimate. After he took a tour around the camp, the amazement in his heart increased. Maybe this camp was extremely crude in other people's eyes, but in the eyes of someone as experienced as Bao Yi, there were too many places here that were not normal. That date seed ship was a rare Jingshire talisman. The female show beside boss and the 3 metal guards enveloped in golden armor were unable to be quantified. The first mission he received was to organize the stores. He was very attentive to this mission. The stores could, to a certain degree, reflect the wealth of boss. The storeroom was a mountain cave. It was heavily guarded with 2 whole platoons of shouja. When he entered the deep cavern, and saw the mountainous pile of talismans, he was dumbstruck. In an instant, he felt all the blood in his body suddenly flood into his head. Heavens! It was the first time he had seen talismans piled up in heaps like they were trash. No one to care and repair them. Bao Yi's first thought was, wastrel, they were wastrels. After that, he started to organize through day and night. He organized and sorted the talismans according to type and grade. When Suemo entered the store and saw the reborn storeroom, he was very satisfied. You must have worked very hard, Suemo said. This is this subordinate's duty, Bao Yi hurriedly said. This guy really had abilities, Suemo thought inside. Even though he was full of interest towards business, but it was clear that he definitely would not have the time in the future. You are going to be in charge of the store and be the quartermaster for the troop. Suemo reassured him. As the number of people increased, Suemo felt it was increasingly difficult to manage them all. The training and combat of the shouja in the camp belonged to Gongsun Shidi, but there was a lot of work in supplying resources. It had been a headache for him and Gongsun Shidi. As to Chun Shidi, that maniac could not be relied on. Bao Yi was overjoyed. Thank you, boss. Quartermaster and in charge of the stores, that was a rich job. What he thought more of was the importance of this job. After this, he did not need to worry about his status in this group. Work hard. Suemo encouraged and quickly left the storeroom. Bao Yi's job was very easy to arrange because no one other than him could do the job. However, Suemo felt it was very difficult to arrange the other people. They were skilled in a variety of areas, some of which were very obscure. Suemo still had no idea what to do with them. The only person he could ask for help was Pu Yao. This problem. Pu Yao thought, and then said, maybe you can borrow some methods from our Yao art houses. What methods? Suemo's mind became alert. In the bigger Yao art houses, they would take out a portion of resources and monies each year to support those Yao with unique ideas to study new Yao arts. Pu Yao said, of course, you cannot avoid the necessary examinations and assessments. Suemo's eyes lit up. That was a good idea. If he didn't know how to organize these people, it was better to let them work it out, and he could save effort. As to resources, it would be within the limits of their abilities. What Suemo needed the most at the moment was the least effort-consuming method. If it continued like this, he felt that definitely would have no time to cultivate. These days, it wasn't easy being the boss. Chapter 249, A New Plan. He Xiang's face was black. The battle that had occurred at Nanxing village was nothing less than a slap to his face. Also, This incident had coincided with the most crucial moment in negotiations. Looking at the slightly mocking expressions on the faces of the group of leaders, he understood that he would not be able to negotiate for the price he wanted. He needed to prove Clear Sky Sect's dominance of Little Mountain Jie. He needed to tell everyone what would happen if they went against Clear Sky Sect and him. He Xiang's expression was twisted viciously like a wild beast wanting to bite someone. There was none of the slight smile that had been on his face during the day. All of you, just wait. Suemo read through Yuan Zhang's new plan. At first glance, he liked this plan, a plan that was completely different than before. Yuan Zhang was introducing the details. This is an extreme plan. All of the construction is about one goal, our imaginary enemy, the Clear Sky Old Forefather. When he spoke of Clear Sky Old Forefather, Yuan Zhang's voice was excited. To be able to maximize offensive and defensive capabilities, we rejected the plan to build a large city in this new plan. We will build a small city, a very small city, one that can only contain 10,000 people. Over here. He pointed at the highest peak. As the new city will be small, it will greatly reduce the area we have to defend, and gather our strength. Inside the new city, other than the basic necessities, all other constructions not related to combat have been abolished. The new city will be a big formation. This way, we can dramatically increase the defensive capabilities of the new city. We will hollow out the other 6 mountain peaks, and connect them to the new city underground. This way, we can form a gigantic 7-star formation. We've never planned such a large formation before, and do not know if it can stop a Jindan, but this is the limits of what we can do. Boss needs to find experts in formations to complete this plan. Suemo stared at the new blueprints without a word. Yuan Zhang was slightly uncertain. He didn't want to ruin his first job. What he didn't know was that his plan had given Suemo endless inspiration, especially the idea of digging out the 6 mountain peaks and forming a 7-star formation underground. That idea was too crazy, too creative. Suemo was thinking, if it was like that, the Sky Star Lake could also be included in the big formation. Using the mountains and lakes to set up a formation, Yuan Zhang's plans had opened a new window for Suemo. Suemo had never tried such a terrifying and large formation. However, he knew that if this big formation could be formed, its power would be greater than any formation he had ever set up before. The entire area around Sky Star Mountain would become an area controlled by the new city. Also, it would be so well disguised. Who could think that anyone would set up such an insane formation? There were many places inside the city that could be improved, especially in the area of formations. It was clear that the 3 people were less skilled in the area of formations compared to Suemo. Suemo suddenly thought of a problem. Power. Such a large formations, how many Jingshi would it take to activate? An even more insane idea jumped out of his head. Just at this time, he heard Yuan Zhang's worried words, "Boss, the building materials for this city isn't easy to find." Suemo silently remembered his thought and raised his head to smile smugly at Yuan Zhang. "We've already started to prepare the bricks." Yuan Zhang stilled, and did not look very happy. He said, "Boss, for the new city to achieve the predicted effect, these bricks can't be just anything. We need, follow me." Suemo did not waste words and turned to lead the front. When Yuan Zhang saw the mountains of blue gold stone bricks that had already been processed, he was dumbstruck. The other 2 people also gaped, looking dazedly at the glittering blue gold bricks. After a beat, Yuan Zhang managed to react and leap forward. Good. The quality is comparable to talismans. However, it is the first time I have seen such a hot presence. Yuan Zhang's expression was excited. Only now did he finally believe that boss really wanted to build a city. These bricks have been processed with golden crow fire. The quality isn't bad. A rock in Suemo's heart landed. It looked like these bricks would satisfy Yuan Zhang's demands. Great. Yuan Jiang was thrilled. Now that the problem of the bricks has been resolved, the other problems are easy. Sui Mo did not speak. In his view, it was the exact opposite. The other problems were even harder. It really was a vast undertaking. Wei Qingbin's recent days were not very good. Rationally, absorbing such a desired and fine fire seed as golden crow fire should make a person happy. Even though there was none of the ling grains that had been predicted, but everyone had received a black meditation mat. When Master Sun Bao had showed them how to use it, these black meditation mats had become everyone's most treasured possession. Many people were regretting that they hadn't taken enough jingsha with them. No one had any objections about their wages turning from the ling grains to jingsha. What saddened him was the work that had followed. When he saw the bluestone bricks that were multiple times larger than he was, he instantly did not know what to do. After that, it had taken him great effort before managing to process one of them. Then he found that other people had finished 3 pieces. Therefore, his wages were 1/3 of other people's income. Master Ji Wei suddenly gathered people together. Who knows how to make small parts? The dejected Wei Qingbin instantly jumped out, his eyes bright. I know. Other than him, a few other people had also stood up. Wei Qingbin glanced and laughed inside. All of them were people that had not performed well in the recent days. Master Ji Wei did not say anything and gave them each a jade scroll. Make whatever you can from what is in there. All the materials are over there. It's the same, pay by unit. Finishing, Master Ji Wei did not waste words and left. In the time he had spent here, Wei Qingbin had gradually gotten used to the busy atmosphere in this place. There were no idle people to be seen here. All the people, including boss, seemed extremely busy. The cave was even more so. Because wages were calculated according to quantity, everyone was furiously working as the meditation mat meant jingsha became a lifesaver. Everyone hoped to get more jingsha. Only Xiuzhe that had experienced the lack of ling energy and faced the possibility that their cultivation could collapse at any time would work so crazily. He started to read the jade scroll in his hands and made a sound of surprise. Everything inside the jade scroll were strange metal constructs. There seemed like talismans but were not talismans. There were very detailed descriptions. Wei Qingbin recognized them. These were for a type of puppet. He silently praised the wisdom of the person who had this idea. The puppet had been deconstructed to many little constructs. This person clearly was going after assembly. Wei Qingbin reacted. The number of Xiuzhe here was limited, and there were no Xiu slaves. Puppets were a pretty good substitute. However, what puzzled him was that puppets needed Xiuzhe to direct them. With so many puppets, how many Xiuzhe would be needed to direct them? This thought turned in his head once before he threw it out. That wasn't something he should care about. He started to work. A short while later, he made his first finished product. He was greatly encouraged, and worked hard. He gradually found that the smaller and more exquisite the item, the easier it was for him to make it. Master Ji Wei quickly noticed his specialty and was somewhat shocked before giving him a job with a batch of small items. His wages quickly grew with astonishing speed. The Xiuzhe around him stared jealously. These days were actually not bad, Wei Qingbin occasionally thought. Still haven't found them. He Xiang bellowed, you group of garbage. How many days has it been since they escaped? You still haven't found them. This group is very cunning. They had scattered and escaped, which wasted a lot of our time. His subordinate defended. Don't find excuses. He Xiang controlled his anger, his tone dark, what I want are results. As long as old forefathers' order has not come down, I am the chief elder. Before this, I can execute any of you. The subordinates paled. They knew that He Xiang was not wrong. I'll give you 3 more days. If you cannot find them in 3 days, you can take your heads to see me. He Xiang's words seemed to come from the depths of hell, cold and terrifying. The subordinates knew that defending themselves was ineffective at this time. Everyone dejectedly bowed and quickly left. The chief elder would do what he said. The old forefather would not interfere. There were too many people waiting to enter to the outer hall, too many people that could replace them. When everyone had left, He Xiang collapsed on the chair as though he had been robbed of all energy. His eyes were as dull as those of a dead fish. 3 days, that was the deadline the old forefather gave. If there were no further developments in 3 days, he wasn't going to live any longer. Originally, he had wanted to conceal this matter, and had not expected someone to bring it to old forefather. The result could be imagined. If he did not display enough ability, he knew very well the outcome waiting for him. Ma Fan chewed a piece of grass in his mouth, looking in boredom at the sky above his head. He muttered, "Troublesome, it really is troublesome." The platoon leader tightly followed behind his butt, completely disregarding Ma Fan's grouching. He was overjoyed at having gotten picked by Ma Fan. He was one of the original ones and very clear as to Ma Fan's previous position and effect within the troop. Previously, many people had expected Ma Fan would have been the first division leader. This platoon leader knew one thing. If he followed behind Ma Fan, he would learn many things. The Xiuzhe under his command did not understand why the platoon leader was so respectful towards this Xiuzhe that had been inattentive all this time. In their eyes, the biggest reason Ma Fan did not fit in with the troop was that indifference he exuded. Idle, lazy, wasn't those things that the platoon leader extremely disliked? They aren't far from us. A piece of grass held between his lips, Ma Fan's words were slightly muddled. The platoon leader listened very carefully. On the way here, he was full of admiration towards Ma Fan's judgment. Ma Fan raised his eyelids, looked into the distance, and continued, "Let everyone recover their Ling power. They will probably encounter us in 6 hours." The platoon leader's expression tensed. The slight wind in the air suddenly seemed slightly murderous. Chapter 250, Pu Yao's insane suggestions. Mo stretched and released a long breath, his entire body sore. However, when he looked at the jade scroll in front of him, he couldn't help but give a proud smile. He had completely improved the new plan. All the formations in the plans were redone. Formation defense style, he have a taste of the true formations defense style. Mo was very satisfied and proud of the finished plan. In the process of improving them, he had benefited. It had been very valuable. There were many questions he had never thought of before. There were many problems when building a city, and it was far more complex than formations. He tried to put different kinds of formations into every corner of the plans. Unlike Yuan Jiang and the others, Mo would use formations in any place possible if he did not have to use manpower. The enormous construction would become a shockingly complex formation group, a gigantic formation belt composed of more than 400 formations of various sizes. Mo anticipated what expression Yuan Jiang would have when he saw this completely transformed plan. Pu Yao suddenly came out to remind him, "This is a good chance." Mo stilled and asked, "What's a good chance?" Gong Sun Cha had become at leisure recently and spent every day playing war chess with Pu Yao. Usually, as long as he was facing off Gong Sun Cha, Pu Yao would be much calmer. Many times, Mo could not help but feel that Pu Yao really was like a child. Of course, this kind of comparison was something a Sky Yao could not tolerate. Mo had smartly shut his mouth. "Your body is barely acceptable, but you have been lacking in your cultivation recently. The potential of this body has not been completely excavated," Pu Yao said, his voice heavy. "Wastefulness is shameful." Mo looked in shock at Pu Yao. That tone, why did it sound so similar to his own? Wrong feeling, wrong feeling. Mo shook his head and threw the feeling aside. He said in helplessness, "There's no other way. You can see it. I'm just one person. I can't be split in two. So what is in front of you is a chance. Right now, you have reached the peak of mountain physique. If you take another step, you will give birth to the moon soul, and reach the level of Mo captain. Light flashed through Pu Yao's bloody pupil. The level of Mo captain. Equivalent to your Shouja's Ningmai. Sui Mo was greatly disappointed. He was already Ningmai. After the breakthrough to create a moon soul, that would just be equivalent to a Ningmai. It was not that attractive to him. Pu Yao seemed to see what Sui Mo was thinking and smiled coldly. Don't feel as though it is unprofitable. Your physique has a name, it is called jade metal head. Metal skin, jade bones. In low-level Mo physiques, it is among the top. That guy really put a lot of effort into it. Your luck isn't bad, you made it through. Once you have a moon soul, you can absorb the power of the moon, and grow quickly. Also, there is an extra benefit to you that others don't have. What benefit? Sui Mo hurriedly asked. Your spiritual cultivation is star spiritual cultivation. If you can cultivate to moon soul, you can absorb the powers of the stars and moon. If you are lucky, you may cultivate the stars and moon wheel. What is the stars and moon wheel? Just like you Shouja like using grades to divided good and bad, high and low, Yaomua have similar divisions. Mo cultivate their bodies. There are many considerations. Other than the Mo skills learned during life, all kinds of Mo physiques are crucial, and there are naturally differences in quality. Mo live under military law. They like using military rankings to divide everything. Soldier, captain, colonel, brigadier general, marshal, king. That group of people are simple-minded. Almost everything is divided like this, it's easy to remember. Pu Yao's tone was filled with disdain and scorn towards the intelligence of Mo. Then jade metal head is what level? 5th in captain level. Pu Yao spread out 5 fingers and waved them. Seeing the disappointment on Sui Mo's face, he sneered, alright, don't act as though you didn't get anything. Mo physique isn't so easy to achieve. Any physique in the top 5 of all levels are what others dream about. However, you have to be careful, Mo physique is good, but if you encounter those people that refine corpses, you have to be careful. Mo physique is something they dream about too. Ha ha. Sui Mo's heart tightened as he listened. Then stars and moon wheel. It's also a Mo physique. It is also a Mo physique, but it is even more rare. 12th in colonel level, Pu Yao recalled, if I didn't remember it wrong. Sui Mo listened and was even more confused. Is there any practical benefits? Pu Yao stilled. What is called practical benefits? Like can I defend against other people's flying swords, like my strength is 10 times what it was, like, Pu Yao rolled his eyes, if someone like you can deal with flying swords with just your body, you Shouja would have been destroyed by us Yaomua a long time ago. Sui Mo was embarrassed. He found it was correct when he thought about it. If Mo could handle strikes from a flying sword with only their body, then Shouja of the same level would not be a match for them. Flying swords could deal the greatest damage of all the talismans, and it was the sharpest. If even the flying sword could not wound the other, then other talismans really could not do a thing against the Yaomua. The flying swords of the Shouja are still very powerful, Pu Yao sighed. You have never seen truly powerful Shouja. With their actions, they can destroy the earth and sky. They can even easily tear apart space, and nothing can stop them. Sui Mo was not interested in those things that were too far away from him, and diverged back to the topic. Those old people has nothing to do with us. This jade metal head is 5th in captain level, it should have some unique attributes. Unique attributes? Pu Yao nodded. Of course. The biggest attribute of the jade metal head is that it is suitable for all Mo skills. Just this? Sui Mo asked in response. Yes, you don't think this is enough? Pu Yao looked at Sui Mo like he was looking at a weirdo. Sui Mo was slightly embarrassed by Pu Yao's stare. But I don't know Mo skills. If you don't want to be killed at any moment, don't cultivate Mo skills in the short term. Pu Yao said solemnly, when you start to cultivate Mo skill, the presence will radiate out. You will only die terribly. Sui Mo was dumbstruck. After all this time, every word was a waste. Then why should I cultivate my body? I should just cultivate the sword. If not that, then even the consciousness works. Little thousand-leaf hands is stronger than that. In a reversal of his usual attitude, Pu Yao shook his head. If you do not have this jade metal head, I won't urge you, but with such a wonderful Mo physique, if you do not cultivate it, it really is a waste. You cannot practice Mo skills at the moment, but that is fine. The jade metal head itself contains extremely deep potential. If you can dig out all the potential, when you cultivate Mo skills in the future, half of the work is already done, and you do not have to worry about the Mo energy slipping out. Sui Mo waved his hand and said unconcernedly, you say these pleasing things, but if we don't get over this obstacle, any Mo skill cultivation is useless. Pu Yao was speechless. He thought and then nodded, you are also right. Maybe we can alter it. Alter? Sui Mo was slightly bewildered. What was with Pu Yao today? Why was he so chatty? We shall do an analysis of what moves you have available. Pu Yao sat down. Let's not include sword scriptures, your talent with the sword really is not good, and your sword essence level is too low, not even at heart-turn sword essence. It isn't even enough to scratch an itch for a Jindan. Little thousand-leaf hands, is pretty powerful, but your consciousness is not strong enough to threaten a Jindan. The Sky Wave Fist scripture, is not enough against a Jindan. The only thing that can be effective is your big formation. The grade of the Yin fire beads are too low to be of significance. Those sonic lightning walnuts might give him some trouble if they are forged properly. When he finished, Pu Yao spread his hands. See, no matter what you cultivate, it's useless. Sui Mo was extremely impacted and speechless. However, some areas have potential. Pu Yao knew very well how to use the stick and the carrot. Sui Mo became alert at those words. Tell me. It's a good idea to use, Yang Fiend Hard Lightning, to forge sonic lightning walnuts. You may want to borrow from the methods of the Yin fire beads, Pu Yao reminded. Sui Mo slapped his forehead and said with joy, right, why didn't I think of that? In the Yin fire bead chapter, there hadn't been just one powerful way to make Yin fire beads. Wouldn't their effects be better than what he thought of himself? He wanted to immediately read the Yin fire bead chapter. The clear sky old forefather was like a sharp sword hanging above his head. He could not sleep well. He had always lacked moves that could threaten his enemies. Now that he had found one, how could he not rejoice? Other than the sonic lightning walnuts, if your physique could improve greatly in the short term, Sky Glass Wave, may also give him some trouble. Sui Mo still again. When he thought closely, he instantly found it feasible. If his body cultivation could make another step forward, if the number of revolutions his Ling power took could increase, the power of Sky Glass Wave would also increase. He had used Sky Glass Wave to break through the space shield of a 5th grade Ling beast. Even though the Bloody Horn Serpent was just a semi-5th grade Ling beast, but if he could increase, he might be able to threaten the Clear Sky Old Forefather. The more he thought, the more excited Sui Mo was. He suddenly found that he could attack. It was like seeing a ray of light in the darkness. Even though it was just a thread, but it still gave him hope. He asked impatiently, what is the opportunity you said? City construction. Pu Yao blinked his bloody pupil. City construction. Sui Mo stilled again, what does this have to do with city construction? The corner of Pu Yao's mouth carelessly rose, his bloody pupil narrowed slightly, and his peerlessly handsome face became even harder to decipher. He looked like a cunning hunter that threw out the bait he had already prepared. With a light laugh, he said, haven't you ever thought of building the city by yourself? Build the city by myself? Suemo was dumbstruck where he stood. Yes, build the city by yourself. Pu Yao raised his long and white finger that contrasted with the bright red fingernail. He chuckled, such a meaningful affair. A city that belongs completely to you. Making the foundation by yourself, making the city by yourself, making the formations by yourself, Suemo turned to stone. See, it won't just exercise your body, it can also exercise your consciousness and your Ling power. Where else can you find such a good chance? A little city that can hold 10,000 people, it really is too small. At the beginning, I had assumed you were building a little city that could hold 100,000 people at the very least. That way, you will be exercised even more. Shall we expand the city? Don't you want to kill that Jin Dan? Your little life is the most important. The harder you work, the more powerful you will be. If you sweat more now, you will spill less blood later. Hearing Pu Yao nag into his ears, Suemo received a great fright. His eyes rolling back, he fainted. Chapter 251, Crazy Suemo. Even a person as unconcerned with worldly affairs as Chun Yucheng had heard the news. Is there really nothing wrong with Xixiang? Looking at a half-naked Suemo that appeared like a maniac, he asked with worry and uncertainty. Gong Sun Cha shook his head and said, I don't know. I heard that he's going to build the city by himself. Chun Yucheng carefully asked. He looked with slight sympathy at Suemo. Xixiang was normally a fanatic, but had the pressure recently been too much, and caused him to become abnormal? Yes, Gong Sun Cha also responded carefully in a small voice as well. I even asked Xixiang a few days ago if we should sweep some more Xiuzhe over. Xixiang said he was going to build the city by himself. So the news is true. Chun Yucheng gave a long sigh, and looked again. He sighed, as expected. I just knew that Xixiang isn't the average person. He looked in sympathy at Suemo, then turned and left with his hands behind his back. Xixiang isn't normal, as expected. Gong Sun Cha gave the same exclamation as before, also turning and leaving. Yuan Zhang's heart trembled as he forced himself to say, Boss, this foundation, it needs to be dug deeper to work. Suemo turned around his face, his eyes gleaming like that of a wolf. Yuan Zhang's face paled. Luckily, Suemo only glanced at him before turning back to furiously start to dig the foundations. He jumped into the pit, his hands dancing as the soil flew. The earth hole quickly increased in depth and size with a speed visible to the naked eye. Yuan Zhang furiously swallowed from the side, his face filled with fear. To be in the position of supervisor like this, he was to be pitied. Every time he saw Boss' twisted features, it was as though there was an ancient wasteland beast in front of him that could open its jaws and swallow him at any moment. He would be so frightened by Boss' gleaming gaze to the point of forgetting to breathe whenever he pointed out areas where Boss had not met the specifications. This world was crazy. The frightened Yuan Zhang felt every day was full of darkness, so black that there was no light. He could not understand what sickness Boss had that he would suddenly want to construct a city by himself. Yes, this city was really quite small. A new city that could hold 10,000 people, the smallest of small cities, but it was still a city. As grown-up as he was, oh, please forgive him for incoherence, it was slightly dubious for Yuan Zhang, who was over 80 years old, to say this. However, in his 80 years of life, he had never seen, nor heard of a Xiuzhe who built a city by themselves. What made him feel helpless was that Boss was serious. As a supervisor, Yuan Zhang thought that Boss was a very exceptional constructor. Look at that blinding speed. If someone had such a good worker under them, any supervisor would laugh. However, if the situation was changed and there was only this one good worker, then they would cry. With Boss' present speed, Yuan Zhang felt hopelessness about building the city. What made him feel the greatest lack of hope was that the other was his boss. Zuemo felt every piece of muscle in his body was trembling uncontrollably. He seemed to have lost control over his body. He opened his mouth like a fish that was thrown onto land, his body motionless. This body cultivation was really through. Zuemo felt even the insides of his head were trembling. All of his power, no matter if it was physical power, Ling power or spiritual power, had been completely consumed in this extreme labor. In the plans for the city, the foundation was to be 20 zhang deep. Zuemo had to use his bare hands to dig out the entire foundation. Pu Yao was very devious. Zuemo weakly cursed Pu Yao inside. After resting for a moment, the lingdan he had shoved into his mouth earlier started to release their medicinal power. The black processing meditation mat under his body continuously guided Ling energy into Zuemo's body. At this moment, Zuemo's body was like a parched desert that was greedily sucking in any drop of medicinal and Ling power. After a while, Zuemo recovered some energy and struggled up. The sun above his head was slightly blinding. He turned to glance at the half-completed ditch. Taking in a deep breath, he jumped back into the ditch. The abnormal state of boss had long ago passed through the entire camp. Everyone had been discussing it in secret. They couldn't understand what boss intended to do. Zuemo mechanically waved his arms. His speed was very fast. His consciousness was continuously released and reflected every detail of the dirt around him. Pu Yao had been right. If he could build up this city by himself, his strength definitely could break through to a whole new level. But this was such a perverse plan. Zuemo tightly pressed together his dry lips, pushed his head down and dug crazily. He started to learn how to use his consciousness to inspect the surrounding dirt, how to use the structure already present in the soil to save energy. He started to understand how to frugally use Ling power. Before this, he had never thought there would be a day where he would use Ling power so stingily. He started to understand how to move his hands as he absorbed earth energy at the same time. 3 days later, a square-shaped hole 20 zhang deep appeared on Sky Star Peak. Zuemo looked like a mud person. Only his eyes were revealed. After laughing soundlessly, he sat down and crossed his legs. Yuan Zhang was at the side, gaping as he looked at the 20 zhang deep foundation, a foundation that had completely met the specifications. It was not just him that was gaping. The entire camp was shocked. Those Xiuzhe that had had slightly mocking attitudes were so shocked they could not speak when they saw this 20 zhang deep ditch. Who could believe this was something a Xiuzhe had dug with his bare hands? However, they had seen the entire process with their own eyes. Those people that had watched in order to laugh at the joke now only felt admiration. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao stared at the gravestone and said, "I now understand why you chose him. You," he paused after each word, "are similarly stubborn." The gravestone was still silent, the black clouds slowly moving around it. Gongsun Cha looked thoughtfully at the meditating Zuemo and turned back to return to the camp. He ordered the Xiuzhe in a low voice, "Tell Ma Fan and the others to distract some more. They need to slow them down. We need more time." "Yes." This Xiuzhe took out a paper crane, wrote down a secret code on it, and lightly channeled Ling power. The paper crane flapped into the sky and instantly disappeared. Before Ma Fan and the others left, they had left behind their impressions. These paper cranes could follow the impressions and find Ma Fan and the others. Little Mountain Jie was not large. It was convenient to use paper cranes. "What about us?" Another Xiuzhe couldn't help but ask. Other than Ma Fan and the others had each taken a platoon with them, there were still many battle Xiuzhe at the camp. The figure of Shixiang completely covered in mud appeared in Gongsun Cha's mind. His step slightly paused before recovering. "Naturally, we can't be idle as well." Ma Fan scanned the battlefield. More than a dozen corpses laid askew on the grass. Large holes could be seen everywhere. The plains that appeared to extend without end had been torn to pieces. The Ling power was lingering in the air. It almost was possible to smell the viciousness of the battle moments ago. The enemy had all been destroyed, but one of their own had also died. The platoon leader's expression was slightly sorrowful. This was the first time that a fatality had occurred under his command. The remaining Xiuzhi were silently cleaning up the battlefield and gathering the spoils. The victory had turned melancholic due to one of their own dying. Ma Fan looked at his slightly dejected fellows and was somewhat shocked but also proud. In any group that he had stayed in before, the morale would have never dropped after a victorious battle due to one of their own dying. Maybe, these were true fellows. Ma Fan thought idly. Just at this time, he raised his head. A paper crane flew through the sky. He held out a hand, and the paper crane flew in. Unfolding it and reading, he muttered, "Trouble." He then handed the paper crane to the platoon leader behind him. "What does head mean?" The face of the platoon leader was filled with puzzlement. There was no explicit orders on the paper crane, just telling them to try their best to delay the enemy. Ma Fan did not reply. Noticing the cleaning of the battlefield was almost done, he adjusted his clothing, and lazily said, "Get everyone to prepare. We need to leave here. The enemy will probably quickly find this place." "Where should we go?" the platoon leader asked with curiosity. "Let's go south." The platoon leader jumped in fright. "Isn't that Nanxing village?" "Yes," Ma Fan said absent-mindedly. As his understanding of sword essence deepened, his original personality started to gradually show. After the reorganization, he did not need to act as the core, and his entire person seemed to instantly have relaxed, and resumed his lazy attitude of the past. "Why are we going there?" "To attack Nanxing village." Ma Fan looked at the platoon leader like he was looking at an idiot. "We only have this tiny amount of people. Attack Nanxing village? Do you want to die? Then why are we going south?" Ma Fan did not look at him. He plucked a stalk of green grass and held it in his mouth, mumbling, "Killing midway." The sound of the whistle was like knives. Suemo opened his eyes, the light in them bright. He had meditated for 3 whole days. How long had it been since he had such a long meditation? Suemo thought back in his mind, his heart filled with joy. He could feel the change in his body. Jade Metal Head, ranked 5th of all captain physiques. As expected, it was extraordinary. He didn't seem to use strength, but his body seemed to be pulled up by an invisible rope, and he stood up. Metal skin and jade bones. He had not experienced the benefits of these jade bones, but the benefits of this metal skin had started to clearly show. The muscles of his body had been as hard as metal in the beginning with astounding flexibility. When he dug the foundation, every piece of muscle in his body seemed to have been reforged again. The space between the muscles decreased, and the muscles became tighter and more dense. These minuscule changes increased his strength by 3/10. He did not need to use Ling power or earth energy to easily push his hand into the bluestone. Looking at his body covered in mud, he wasn't angry and snickered. The little art of cloud and rain instantly appeared above his head. The rain vented and in a short while, all the mud on Zhuomo's body had been washed away. Zhuomo discovered that his skin seemed to now show a strange black sheen that seemed slightly metallic. As he marveled, Zhuomo took his eyes away. Yuan Jiang, who had fallen asleep as he stood guard, was awoken at this time, and opened his blurred eyes. When he saw Zhuomo, he instantly shook, and the drowsiness disappeared. He seemed to jump off the ground and rapidly flew next to Zhuomo. "Boss. Let's continue. What do we do next?" Zhuomo looked at the deep foundation. Bravado suddenly flooded into his heart. "Come on." Chapter 252, Fire Paper Method. Xiang released a breath in the side. 12 hours before the final deadline, and he had finally found the enemy. As long as he found the enemy, he had the time to sort them out. The feeling of living after near death filled his body. He couldn't help but want to exhale, but when he saw the hint of disappointment in the eyes of second elder, he forced himself to keep it in. A hint of darkness flashed across the deepest part of his eyes. He did not want to show his weakness in front of his opponent. I've said it before. As long as they are in Little Mountain Jia, how can we not find them? He pretended to be calm and said with a smile, tell us the situation. He looked as though he had expected all this. Chief Elder, our people had encountered the enemy on the plains in West River. A small platoon of 16 people, our people were completely defeated. West River Plains. He Xiang mused, let Yuan take some people and make a trip. The other side has 4 people that have comprehended sword essence, and a Diana Xiao that has an abhina. We cannot underestimate them. Yes. The subordinate hurriedly complied. Go quickly. Report anytime there is news. He Xiang waved his hand. The subordinate was perceptive and left. No wonder this group dare to be so presumptuous. They do have some ability. He Xiang smiled as he spoke to the other elders. A little troop just disappeared like this without a sound. Chief Elder is wise, an elder agreed. However, if they want to work against our Clear Sky sect, they obviously do not know their own limits, and are asking for their death. The other elders all nodded. As to the little troop that had all died, no one was concerned. What did it have to do with them? The outer hall did not lack for people. Below their feet were patches of clouds that spread into the horizon like a sea of clouds. Flying above the cloud layer, the sky was perfectly blue. Without any cover, the sunlight was abnormally poisonous. If one did not have their Ling armor activated, they would be unknowingly corroded with a thread of fire poison contained in the sunlight. There would rarely be Xiuzha who would fly so high. The strong wind at high elevations and the fire poison in the sunlight would increase the consumption of Ling power in flight. A troop of about 300 people howled across the sea of clouds with astounding speed. Boss, where are we going? The subordinate asked Gongsun Cha. Gongsun Cha was sitting on a large green sword. There was an egg-shaped Ling shield around the big sword, blocking out the sharp wind and poisonous sunlight. Inside the Ling shield, it was as warm as the spring and unusually silent. This big sword that was about 1.5 zhang long had been forged of an entire block of 4th-grade wind Ling wood. Peerlessly light, it was an extremely fine flying sword. However, it was sumptuous to use such a big piece of wind Ling wood to make a flying sword. This was a spoil of victory. This flying sword was called Green Cloud, and had become Gongsun Cha's personal flying sword. Because this flying sword could hold 7 or 8 people at the same, the person sitting on the point of the flying sword was the Xiuzha who was controlling Green Cloud. With Gongsun Cha's Juji cultivation, he basically could not move Green Cloud. Don't you feel that we are too few in number? When Gongsun Cha asked this, he seemed very much like a young and confused youth. Of course, the people sitting here had become immune long ago. Not too few. We have 6 divisions now. But this city can hold 10,000 people. Gongsun Cha's voice seemed slightly childlike. Everyone sweated. It seemed Lil Mi's sense of humor was increasing. However, Gongsun Cha's words made everyone's hearts shake. The implication of Lil Mi's words were clear. They couldn't help but feel a thread of sympathy for the Xiuzha in the surrounding area. Then which place are we going to fight this time? The subordinate asked carefully. One by one. Everyone shook again. Gongsun Cha moved his mouth and another Xiuzha took out a jade scroll, channeling Ling power inside. A light flashed and an illusory landscape of rivers and mountains appeared in front of them. There are 13 different powers in our surroundings. The biggest has over 500 Xiuzha, the smallest has 80 Xiuzha. Oh, on average, each faction has about 200 people. 13 factions, how many would that be? Gongsun Cha tilted his head as he asked. The subordinate swallowed, about 2,600 people. The faces of the people changed slightly. In total, they had slightly more than 300 people. If they were to attack more than 2,600 people, the difference in numbers was really too large. Just 2,000. A slightly disappointed expression came onto Gongsun Cha's face. Everyone's heart jumped simultaneously as they hurriedly urged. It's more than enough, more than enough. Head, we should fight one at a time. Yes, yes. An empire isn't built in a day. They feared that Gongsun Cha would be crazy and increase the number of targets. It was very likely that something like that could happen. Gongsun Cha showed a disappointed expression. All right, even though it is slightly less, but we shall first eat them. Head is wise. The subordinates said together. Gongsun Cha smiled as though he enjoyed the respect of all the people. Head, we've taken so many people out, the safety of the camp is, we don't have to worry about that. It's enough to have 2 platoons standing guard. That woman is very strong, Gongsun Cha said carelessly. Everyone finally recalled that boss had a female show of immeasurable power that followed him. Then they recalled the 3 golden armor guards that never showed their faces, and instantly stopped talking. Oh, we will return to the camp in a month. The faint tone made everyone's hearts shake as it entered their ears. All of the Shouja forcefully stood up from the body of the sword. Floating midair, they solemnly accepted the order. Yes. Batches of blue gold bricks were transported next to the foundation. They piled up into little mountains. Yuan Jiang glanced over and couldn't stop himself from swallowing. He urged weakly, "Boss, we should call some more people over." Suemo ignored him and picked up 2 blue gold bricks. The thick bricks seemed to weigh nothing in his hands. What do I do? Seeing the situation, Yuan Jiang could only helplessly inform, gold soup needs to be poured between 2 blue gold bricks, and then spells are used to reinforce them. During the entire process, you have to notice to not damage the formations already on the blue gold bricks. The root of the wall needs to be set up with earth element formations to connect them to the earth veins, so they can root themselves in the earth and become hard to shake. After the city walls are completed, bigger formations have to be drawn onto the surface of the outside walls. Yuan Jiang had already prepared and handed Suemo a jade scroll. There were all kinds of detailed explanations in it, like the recipe for the gold soup. Gold soup was a substance that was created by mixing all kinds of gold element materials together. After he finished reading the entire scroll, Suemo suddenly asked, "Can't I just melt the 2 blue gold bricks together?" Melt them together? Yuan Jiang was dumbstruck. How to melt? Suemo himself was not so confident about the idea he just had and decided to try. He put the 2 blue gold bricks together, and then he summoned the golden crow fire. After some thought, the spell on his hands changed, and the golden crow fire seemed to be pulled in 4 directions by an invisible force. Yuan Jiang's eyes were wide as he stared at the changes in Suemo's golden crow fire. The golden crow fire gradually spread out and became increasingly thin until it was as thin as paper, an extremely thin golden piece of fire paper. At this point, the fire paper did not change anymore, but slowly flew towards the 2 blue gold bricks that were stacked together. The fire paper paused in front of the blue gold brick and then burrowed into the gap between the 2 blue gold bricks. The fire paper quickly spread out flat between the 2 pieces of blue gold bricks. A short while later, the brick surfaces facing the gap started to melt at the same time. There were no other signs of melting in the other parts of the brick. Suemo's expression was serious. His consciousness was spread to its limits. Seeing that it was almost enough, the fire paper suddenly flew out between the 2 blue gold bricks. The 2 blue gold bricks instantly stuck together. Suemo didn't dare to pause, and sent out 5 spells according to the description on the jade scroll. The lights from the 5 spells accurately hit the merge point between the 2 blue gold bricks. When the last spell entered the 2 pieces of blue gold bricks, what appeared in front of everyone was a single piece of blue gold brick. It appeared to be one body, the surface as bright and smooth as a mirror without any gap. Yuan Jiang was so shocked he couldn't speak. It wasn't just him. All the other forging shio that were watching were left dumbstruck when they saw Zhuo Mo's skill with controlling fire. Zhuo Mo released a long breath. Good, he didn't embarrass himself too much. He felt slightly proud. Pointing at the big blue gold brick that had just been forged, he said, "Go try and see what the effect is." Yuan Jiang was startled out of his daze and hurriedly arranged for an assessment of the new blue gold brick. After a while, he ran back with an excited expression. Boss. Strong. It really is too strong." Zhuo Mo wanted to know the results. Hearing Yuan Jiang filled with meaningless words, he couldn't control himself. "Tell me the result." There was still some hint of disbelief in Yuan Jiang's eyes. "This is the strongest brick that this subordinate has ever seen. Definitely the strongest. We did a comparison with the best gold soup. Boss's fire paper method was about 2 times stronger than reinforcing with the gold soup. We also found when there is too much outside force, the entire blue gold brick would turn to powder, but before that, it never shows a crack. The ones made with the gold soup will crack at the mortar joints of the 2 blue gold bricks if the outside force is large enough." Hearing Yuan Jiang blab on, Zhuo Mo's head felt dizzy. He could only ask, "So my method is better?" "Better. Much better." Yuan Jiang was so excited he couldn't control himself. The increase in strength that Boss method would provide to the city walls was greater than any method he knew. The other 2 people were also very excited. Zhuo Mo was very smug inside, and he did not feel much excitement. However, it was not hard for him to understand why Yuan Jiang and the others were excited. If they didn't like it, who would study something as obscure as city construction? When a breakthrough development happened in an area a person liked, no one would be able to keep their composure. "Oh, you guys can study the remaining. I'm going to start the work." Zhuo Mo didn't plan on wasting time. Time was very expensive. The Ling power spat out of his hand and coiled around 20 blue gold bricks like a Ling snake. He directly put them on his shoulder. He felt his shoulders suddenly weigh down, his feet sinking into the earth. It was really heavy. These blue gold bricks were all forged from large slabs of bluestone. Even though the volume had shrunk, the weight had not lessened. If it was any other person, they would have been pounded into paste when the 20 pieces were put on their shoulders. Zhuo Mo steadied his body and released a breath. Pulling his leg out of the mud, he started to charge towards the foundation. Bam bam bam. Each time Zhuo Mo's step landed, the earth would shake. Everyone in the surroundings inhaled in shock. There were 2 Diana Shio in the 2 platoons who had stayed behind. Seeing this inhuman feat, they were very embarrassed. Which motherfucker said that Boss was a sword Shio? Chapter 253, Golden Crow Walls. The blue gold bricks were neatly stacked together. The flying fire paper spread out and rolled, sometimes as straight as a knife as it passed through the gaps between the blue gold bricks. Zhuo Mo's expression was serious, a faint layer of light in his eyes. The fire paper danced faster and left behind beautiful golden trails in the air. His Ling eyes and consciousness were stretched to their limits. No flow of Ling power in the surroundings could escape Zhuo Mo's perception. His hands were like flowers blooming. Zhuo Mo's well-practiced finger motions were completely used. His half-raised hands were always in the middle of countless afterimages that flickered in and out. Many Shioja couldn't help but put down what they were doing to come watch. Occasionally, gasps would sound out from among the crowd. Everyone was intoxicated. These Shioja were mostly non-combat production Shioja. They were one of the classes that emphasized finger motions the most. Zhuo Mo's precise Ling power control did not waste one drop of energy. In their eyes, he was comparable to the most classic examples. This was an experience to be enjoyed. If Swa-Emo moving the blue gold bricks previously had been the most basic and bare example of strength, then the grand finger motions and the amazing Ling power control now represented the highest levels of control and technique. It was the first time Swa-Emo had tried using his consciousness and Ling Eye at the same time. After a very short amount of time, he felt the benefits. The world in his eyes had never been so lively and dimensional in his eyes. His consciousness could detect every detail of the objects in front of him, his Ling eyes could detect every change in the Ling power. He was almost able to see the patterns behind the walls. With a glance, he would know everything in his field of vision. This also caused his efficiency to skyrocket, and lead to the scene occurring right now. Yuan Jiang had lost all power of speech. What was happening before his eyes surpassed the limits of his imagination. With a speed visible to the naked eyes, the blue-gold brick walls grew upwards. This kind of speed was outside of his knowledge. Even more, this was all done by a single person. This world was too insane. The last thread of his rationality caused him to look at the remaining blue-gold bricks. He instantly shook and his soul came back into his body. Of the mountain of blue gold bricks that had been piled up before, there were not even 100 pieces left. He thought of his role as the supervisor and ordered people to transport blue gold bricks. Other people did not have Swa-Emo's physical strength, and could only use talismans. Instantly, all the talismans were put to use. Flying swords, Ling hose, jade scepters etc. all turned to a long line. Several bricks hung below each talisman. These bricks were way too heavy. After a few round trips, the blue gold bricks once again piled into a mountain. Yuan Jiang released a breath inside, and his expression relaxed. Just as Yuan Jiang's expression eased, Ji Wei and Sun Bao's expressions became nervous. The two of them had been entranced in Boss' grand performance had suddenly reacted when they saw Yuan Jiang summon people to transport blue gold bricks. The two rapidly calculated how many blue gold bricks were remaining, and their faces changed. Based on Boss' terrifying speed, the remaining blue gold bricks would quickly be unable to keep up with demand. The two of them were responsible for forging. If something happened here, they could not deflect their fault. Previously, the two of them had feared Boss more than they respected him. Now that they had personally seen the abilities of Boss, they were full of respect to the point that they kowtowed. The more respect they held, the more they were unwilling to drag Boss down due to their own mistakes. The two of them exchanged a look and did not hesitate in herding off the forging Xiuzha that were watching. Work, work. Immediately. Anyone that dares to slow down, will cut your wages. Those that are making blue gold bricks, listen. The wage for each piece is increasing by 50%. The two played good and bad, one punished while the other rewarded. The Xiuzha that made blue gold bricks instantly ran off to work. They may have been motivated by Boss, or by the high wages, but each person was full of motivation. The camp was very busy. Ma Fan is so meddlesome. Lei Peng looked at the paper crane in his hands and muttered. He handed the paper crane to the platoon captain beside him in frustration. After the platoon captain finished reading, he couldn't help but ask, "What do we do?" Lei Peng said, frustrated, "What to do? Do according to what he says." Then he muttered, "This guy had been the corps before, he should know more." The platoon captain was used to Lei Peng's impatient tone. He knew that Lei Peng did not have malicious aims, but he was frustrated with having to take along greenhorns. He was an old member so he understood very well. Sometimes, even he would feel frustrated, much less a battle maniac like Lei Peng. As the order passed down, everyone's figures quickly disappeared. In a patch of wood about 200 li far from Lei Peng. "Can Ma Fan Darren's plan work?" the platoon captain asked Xia Shan uncertainly. Xia Shan smiled and replied, "He was the corps before. Of all of us, he received the most teachings from Gongsun Darren. None of us are likely to surpass him. This is really a big plan, the platoon captain sighed. Xia Shan smiled and said, let's start. At the same time, more than 10 troops led by other people quietly hid in places about 800 li from Nanxing village. This distance was very well grasped. Usually, the range of scouting troops were around 1,500 li. This distance was about half of that. The suggestion Ma Fan gave them was to carefully sneak in and kill the little troops of Xiuzhe as they were coming back. The Xiuzhe that were coming back would not have much Ling power after long-distance flight, and their combat power should be at a relatively low level. In the hearts of the Xiuzhe of Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall, this position was a relatively safe area. They would not be so high alert and may relax their guard. Of course, even more importantly, they could successfully reach the position of the plan. As long as they could do this, Ma Fan's string of plans had a high probability of success. In many people's view, Lil Miss campaign this time was slightly unexpected, but when battle started, they found that they were wrong. Lil Miss had done extremely detailed preparations. This was seen from the moment the first battle started. Wei Ran securely remembered Lil Miss's order. In the first charge, they did not use all of their power like they usually did. They only used the first charge of the 3-section wave killing charge. The third division he led was like a knife that had ran out of power, having cut only halfway into the enemy ranks. The faces of some of the other division leaders that were present all changed dramatically. The 3-section wave killing charge was to be completed altogether. It was to be like a heavy blade, cutting everything in half. If it halted in the enemy ranks, and was surrounded in all directions, and if their side had lost the momentum, then it was an extremely dangerous situation. But Lil Miss did not even look, and continued to add large numbers of fighters towards the flanks of the enemy. After a while, everyone found that Wei Ran, who they thought would have lost many people, were only lightly damaged. Wei Ran's mission was to trap 16 Xiuzhe. These 16 Xiuzhe were the strongest power in the enemy ranks. It was not that their combat abilities were powerful, but the contribution they made towards their troop. These 16 people were a rare group, Seal Xiu. Because the attack had been extremely abrupt, these 16 Xiuzhe hadn't had the time to spread out before Wei Ran caught them all. Seal Xiu were not famed for their combat abilities, but they were skilled in using all kinds of seal curses which could dramatically increase the combat abilities of the Xiuzhe around them. The first people Lil Miss dealt with were them. He used Wei Ran to cut the connection between them and the other Xiuzhe. The balance of battle quickly tilted towards Lil Miss' side. The 16 Seal Xiu looked with terror at the enemy that surrounded them, their hands nervously grasping stacks of seal papers. The mood was extremely tense. One of the Seal Xiu couldn't bear it, the seal paper on his hand unconsciously lighting up. He then heard eldest Shixiang shout, "Don't attack." The seal paper on his hands was instantly blown apart. This group of Seal Xiu were led by a middle-aged person of about 40 years old. Seeing his calm expression, the other people gradually calmed down from their fear. Once they calmed down, they detected the strangeness. The other side might have surrounded them tightly, but did not seem to have any intentions of attacking. The Xiuzhe that had almost attacked was filled with fear. If he had actually attacked just now, then he would really have caused a great disaster. Without the support of the Seal Xiu, the other Xiuzhe quickly collapsed as they faced the extremely sharp juggernaut of the 3-section wave killing charge. The other troops in Gongsun Cha's command had already went back to block the retreat paths and to stop the scattered enemy from running around. The battle quickly ended. There was no joy on Gongsun Cha's face. The strength level of the two sides were not on the same level. If he couldn't defeat these people, then he really had suffered through Pu Yao's abuse for nothing. However, when his eyes turned towards the Seal Xiu, they lit up. If Chen Yuqing was here, he would definitely be shocked to find Gongsun Cha's gaze right now was the same as Weimo Shixiang's when he saw a fat sheep. Gongsun Cha showed his trademark bashful smile. The city walls progressed quickly. Zuomo had thrown himself into the work, and forgot everything. He used the black procession meditation mat to resupply Ling power, and continued, then resupply. He mechanically repeated. The changes in the fire paper gradually decreased. The feeling of grandness slowly disappeared. What took over was accuracy and cleanness. It was as though Zuomo did not know exhaustion until night. When the stars rose above his head, he would stop, sit on the unfinished walls and meditate. When the sun rose on the second day, he would rise on time, and start work again. Facing such a crazy boss, Ji Wei and Sun Bao were almost driven to insanity. The two of them led the other Xiuzhi and used all their power to just barely manage to keep up with Zuomo's speed so that the construction did not stop due to the lack of blue gold bricks. 10 days, the city walls were finished. The blue gold city walls were 10 zhang deep. They were not imposing, but it was still amazing because there were no gaps to be seen on the city walls. They were as smooth as a mirror. When every person stood on the walls, they could not help but reach to touch. Suddenly, the cloud layer above the sky star peak suddenly dissipated. A golden pillar of light came down from the sky, and covered the just-finished city walls. The city walls seemed to be a sponge, continuously absorbing the golden light for an hour. All the Xiuzhi in Sky Star Peak were alerted to this apparition. The golden light slowly faded until it disappeared. The cloud layer in the sky closed again. The blue-gold walls of the city exuded a faint golden light. The presence of the sun golden crow, with the city walls as the center, rippled out towards the surroundings like a wave. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.